that I wasn't going to be a helicopter parent. I wasn't going to snoop or hover. I was going to give my daughter her space and let her grow up naturally, with the sort of independence that I wish that I had had when I was a kid. The older my daughter got, however, the harder it became to keep my promise. My wife, Beth, laughed at my worries. "Oh, you think it's bad now," she said. "Just wait until she's a teenager." For her 9th birthday, Katie wanted to have a sleepover with some friends from school. Beth and I agreed. Katie was trustworthy and responsible, and she had attended other sleepovers with no issues. Knowing how I tended to get, Beth agreed to keep an eye on the kids for the night. I went down to the basement with a 6-pack of pizza and the collector's edition of Seven Samurai on DVD. I collapsed into an old recliner and relaxed for what felt like the first time in 10 years. Less than an hour had passed when I heard a light, nervous rap on the door. It was Beth. She had started feeling nauseous and had come down with a fever, but didn't want to ruin the girls' special night. So of course I agreed to help. Beth had already prepared a platter of grapes, crackers, and cheese sticks for the girls. All I had to do was take it to them. I knew that Katie would prefer that I stomp up the stairs and make my presence known, but that wasn't what I did. If I had, maybe everything would have been different. I just wanted to make sure that my daughter was having a good time and that she wasn't being bullied or pressured into doing anything that made her feel uncomfortable. With my plastic tray in hand, I tiptoed up to her door and pressed my ear against it. At first, all I heard were giggles, and at a preteen girl's slumber party, there was nothing surprising or alarming about that. And then came a high-pitched, nasally voice, one I thought that I recognized. It belonged to a girl named Sarah from Katie's school. "Who is here with us?" Rebecca Hardesty, Allison Bree, Katie McDougal, and Sarah Lee. It was odd. It sounded like the girls were just listing off their full names. And then, "Is there anyone else?" I nudged the door open a bit. The girls were sitting on the floor beneath a white bedsheet. The thin cloth covered them completely, and in the cozy glow of Katie's bedside lamp, the 5 of them looked like cheap Halloween ghosts, or maybe some sort of bizarre art installation. I held my breath, but my nose was already beginning to twitch. I let out an enormous sneeze, causing 5 cloth-covered heads to snap in my direction. "Dad!" Katie shrieked. "What are you doing up here?" The irritation and embarrassment was plain on my daughter's face. Becca and Allie also looked a bit sheepish, but not Sarah. She looked truly angry, as though I had interrupted something of critical importance. "I brought you girls some snacks," I stammered. As the girls bunched the sheet up and tossed it in the corner, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. Hadn't there been 5 of them beneath it? An uncomfortable silence descended on the little room. So what have you girls been up to?" "Just playing a game," Sarah replied snarkily. I wasn't going to get any more out of them. Katie's eyes were begging me to leave. I shrugged, told the girls to have fun, and closed the door behind him. Maybe I just imagined that 5th shape beneath the blanket. Maybe a little scare was exactly what I deserved for eavesdropping. Suddenly I remembered Beth. What the hell was I doing spying on some kids while she was lying sick in bed? By the time that I had finished heating up some chicken noodle soup and ginger ale for my wife, I had forgotten all about the girls' strange little game. The 4 of them woke up fresh and chatty the next morning, and after a few rounds of my famous pancakes, even Sarah forgave me for my intrusion the night before. "And next time at my house," Sarah said when I dropped her off in front of the Lee's suburban ranch house a few hours later. The girls all nodded at once, as though some sort of agreement had already been made. For some reason, the thought that they might try their little game again made my blood run cold. I wasn't sure why. After all, how was it any different from the stuff that I had done as a kid? Chanting Bloody Mary in front of a mirror, daring other kids to spend the night on top of some serial killer's grave. It was no surprise when Katie asked to spend the night at Sarah's a few weeks later. I tried to explain the sinking feeling in my gut to Beth, but her eyes glazed over halfway through. Nothing I had to say, I realized, was going to make sense to anyone who hadn't seen that fifth shape beneath the sheet. In spite of my doubts, I let Katie go with her friends. The house was unusually quiet that weekend. I was convinced that something terrible was about to happen and I couldn't concentrate on anything. I wound up cleaning just to pass the time. And that was how I found the printout. It was in Katie's room, not so cleverly hidden beneath her pillowcase. The paper that it was printed on had gone yellow and the clunky out-of-use font made me think of a ransom note. How to Meet Me was the title of whatever it was. I read on. Gather in the dark and ask who is with you. When you have spoken your true names, I shall as well. Gather in the dark and bring a candle for each greater +1. When you have each revealed your faces, I shall reveal mine. Gather in the dark and... Before I could read further, my phone rang. I ran to it. On the other end of the line, Katie's voice shook, like she had been running hard or crying recently.
Dad, can you come get me?
I sped across town as fast as I dared, somehow certain that I was already too late. It was 10 o'clock when I pulled into the Lee's empty driveway. The whole house was dark apart from the living room's wide bay window. I could see Katie's thin silhouette on the other side of the curtains, along with another one, taller and slimmer, standing right behind her. I sprinted to the front door expecting the worst. Katie opened it as soon as I knocked. She seemed much calmer than she had on the phone. She greeted me with a small, tight hug and immediately tried to squeeze past me toward the car. I blocked her way. "Where are Sarah and the other girls?" I demanded. "Down in the basement," Katie answered, trying to dodge me again. "Who was standing behind you then?" Katie looked confused. "Oh, nobody. Miss Lee, she had to go to the store for a minute. She'll be right back, though." If I knew Sarah's mom, Debbie Lee, she was making run for a case of light beer and some more smokes. I couldn't say I blamed her for her bad habits. If I had lost a child, I figured I would need some chemical help to get through the day too. Still, she was supposed to have been watching the girls. Katie glanced nervously over her shoulder. Behind her, the cracked open basement door swung gently on its hinges, as though a wind was blowing from the blackness on the other side. "Dad," Katie pleaded, "can we please just go?" I gripped Katie's hand and hurried back to the car. "I found a paper underneath your pillow while I was cleaning," I explained to Katie once we were back on the main road, "and I'm a little concerned about what it said." "Oh God," Katie pinched her nose, shutting her eyes tight. She hadn't even whined about me being in her room or going through her things. This had to be serious. "It was Sarah's idea. She found it in Derek's room. I guess he was reading about all that stuff right before he, Sarah's older brother, Derek Lee, had disappeared 2 years before. The community outcry and massive manhunt had only lasted until a baggie of weed was found in Derek's room, and several chats with older men were found on his phone. Overnight, Derek went from a hometown basketball hero who had tragically gone missing to a delinquent who had run away with his lover. It felt like a game at first. We laughed about it even. Sarah was the only one who took it seriously. I guess maybe she thought if we did what the paper said and something happened, it might give her some clue about what had happened to her brother." I glanced over at my daughter. In the greenish dashboard light, she looked gaunt, pale, and much older than she had only a few hours before. "We tried the game again," Katie went on, "and something happened this time. I saw it, Dad. I saw its face." A drizzly rain had begun to fall, making the black streets slick and treacherous. I slowed down to merge into traffic and I checked my rearview mirror. A tall figure was sitting in the back seat. I slammed on the brakes with a gasp and felt the steering wheel spin uselessly in my hands as my car fishtailed onto the shoulder. We skidded to a stop. There was no sound but the patter of rainfall on the roof and the click of the emergency flashers. If anything had really been in my back seat, it was gone now. Katie looked up at me questioningly. I cleared my throat. Sometimes, I told her, we get so caught up in the idea of something that we make it real within our own minds. It's called a shared delusion. If you and Sarah and all of your friends were really sure that something was going to happen, it's no surprise that something did, at least from your perspective. I wasn't sure whether I was trying to convince Katie or myself. We drove home in silence, and as soon as Katie was through the door, she announced that she was going to bed. I felt the same way, but Beth was sitting up in bed waiting for me. She wanted to know why our daughter had left Sarah's sleepover so early. When I explained the part about the weird printout that I had found in Katie's room, Beth sat up and smacked herself in the forehead. She had seen the paper sitting out and had assumed that it was trash. Derek Lee's ritual. If that's what it was, well, it was on its way to the city landfill. I told Beth not to worry about it, maybe it wouldn't matter. Maybe when we woke up in the morning, Katie would have forgotten about the whole thing. There was a scraping noise from the far end of the hallway. It sounded like Katie was sliding a chair in front of her bedroom door. She usually kept it half open to benefit from the hall light, even at her age. Katie was still a little scared of the dark, but now she was shutting it tight. I tossed and turned for hours after Beth fell asleep, but at some point I must have drifted off as well. I woke up to find the house completely black. The nightlight in the hallway had gone out. That wasn't all that was wrong either, though. There were footsteps in the hallway. There was something uncanny about how they echoed, as though they were moving along the ceiling instead of the floor. "Katie," I whispered. "Beth." My wife was sleeping like a stone in bed beside me, and my daughter didn't answer. At the far end of the hallway, I heard the click of a doorknob turning and the scrape of a chair being slid quietly out of the way. "Katie," I shouted. I bashed on the lights and ran towards Katie's wide-open bedroom door. I arrived in time to see her climb out of her second-story window and teeter on its ledge. Yelling my daughter's name for the second time, I flung myself across the room and grabbed the sleeve of her pajamas. Katie glanced down at me. Her eyes had rolled back in her head like those of a corpse or a lunatic. And then slowly, the Katie that I knew came back into focus. "I guess I was sleepwalking," she mumbled, looking out confusedly at the rainy night. "I was having this awful dream, but I can't remember any of it." She wobbled dangerously, but I managed to help her climb back inside. I took my daughter downstairs and made her a hot cocoa and then joined her with a mug of coffee. I knew that I wouldn't be getting any more sleep that night. I asked Katie if she remembered what came after the third step in Derek Lee's ritual, but she shook her head. "All I remember is the last part, the part that went, 'And now you shall be with me forever.' You could ask Sarah, though," Katie added bitterly. "She knows the whole thing by heart." And that was exactly what I decided to do. As soon as the sun was up, I called Sarah's mom, Debbie. Took her a long time to answer, but when she did, she was hyperventilating.
It's happening again. They're gone. They're all gone. The police are on their way."
Barely 20 minutes after I got off the phone with Debbie, 2 plainclothes detectives rang our doorbell. The muscular, middle-aged officer introduced himself as Detective Stetcher. His slim, dark-haired companion was Detective Harris. They had wanted to know everything about the night before. Why Katie had left early, what her relationship with her friends was like, and where we had gone afterwards. Neither detective seemed very curious about whatever weird rituals the girls had been trying out. They were much more interested in me. As the questions continued endlessly, sometimes restated or rephrased in an attempt to trip me up, I realized that I was actually a suspect. After almost 2 hours of kitchen table interrogation, I found myself muttering a phrase that I had only ever heard on TV. I want to talk to a lawyer. I didn't have an attorney, I had never needed one. I was a suburban dad whose worst crime to date was a pair of speeding tickets. But it was clear that the community outcry over this was going to be huge. The police would be expected to prosecute somebody for the girl's disappearance, and if they didn't have any better suspects, that someone was going to be me. Detective Harris scowled, irritating that I was clamming up, but Detective Stetcher just smiled like I had just confirmed something he had suspected but could improve. The two men left me their cards and told me that they would be in touch. Beth hadn't overheard everything we had been talking about, but she realized the trouble that we were in. While my wife frantically called some local law offices, I sat Katie down and asked where she thought her friends had gone. That thing must have talked to them in their dreams, just like it did with me, and now it's got them. Katie looked up at me, her eyes full of tears. And you know the worst part? Sarah said she told the cops about the ritual back when Derek had disappeared. They didn't listen then either. The sun sank slowly beneath the trees in our backyard. I thought of the last line of that paper, "Now you shall be with me forever," and I shuddered. My wife Beth believed the girls' disappearances had to have had a rational explanation. But the whole situation was so strange that she was willing to indulge my crazy-sounding plans for that night. I wanted all of us to sleep in the living room, with the doors and windows locked and the lights on. I also wanted one adult keeping watch at all times. If the circumstances had been different, it would have been fun, almost like a family camping trip inside the house. Katie gave me a nervous little thumbs up as she climbed into her purple sleeping bag. But Beth was less excited. She lay down on the couch and stared up at the ceiling with a sigh. I took the first watch, and from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m., nothing unusual occurred in our house. Even the TV news was mundane. I figured that the police were still trying to keep the girls' disappearances under wraps to avoid hampering the investigation. But anybody could see that that wouldn't last long. At 2 a.m., I woke Beth and took her place on the couch. Despite everything Katie had been through, our daughter was sleeping soundly. Her messy brown hair had fallen over her face and it rose and fell whenever she snored. Beth sat cross-legged in the armchair, blowing on the overheated mug of coffee in her hands. It was only now, when our family was in danger and I was facing a police investigation, that I realized how much I loved the pair of them. Secure in the knowledge that Beth was keeping watch, I turned over and fell asleep. "Honey," Beth's voice speaking silkily into my ear felt like part of my dreams. "Honey, the power's out." The room was so dark that at first I couldn't even tell that I had opened my eyes. The first thing I noticed was that I no longer heard my daughter snoring. "Where's Katie?" I asked, sitting up with a start. "Now she shall be with me forever." My wife's voice had changed, becoming gravelly and mocking. I grabbed my phone from the end table and activated its flashlight. Katie's sleeping bag was unzipped and empty, the front door was open, and Beth was dozing in her armchair, the empty coffee cup dangling from her fingers. I'm sorry, Beth gasped when I shook her awake. "I fell asleep for only a second." My wife called the police immediately, but I dialed a different number. Debbie Lee's. The blinking red digits on the clock in front of me read at 3:35 a.m., but I didn't care. Debbie was the only person who might be able to give me some answers.
"Yeah?"
Debbie slurred, picking up on the second ring. It sounded like she had been drinking since the night before. "This is Katie's dad," She's gone too. I hated saying the words. It made my daughter's disappearance feel more real. Listen, I know how badly the cops and all the rest of us let you down after Derek went missing, but would you give me another chance? I would like to go through Derek's things. It's hard to explain, but I think it might help us find the girls. There was a long pause and then,
Yeah, whatever. I ain't been in that room for years.
the sky had just started to brighten when I pulled into the Lee's driveway. It had broken my heart to leave Beth alone, but I had an awful feeling that if I didn't find the girls before tomorrow, I never would. And Debbie was sitting in a green lawn chair beneath the porch light, a lager in one hand and a cigarette in the other. She shoved open the screen door and pointed to a closed door on the left side of the hallway. I hope you're not expecting me to go in there with you, she huffed. That room's got too many bad memories. From the concert flyers on the walls to the outdated computer, Derek's bedroom was like a time capsule to the world of 2 years before. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, and most of the floor space was taken up by cardboard boxes labeled in black marker. Clothes, DVDs, memories, miscellaneous. On the box labeled miscellaneous, I glimpsed a set of child-sized fingerprints. Sarah must have pulled the printout from here. I opened it, but there was nothing else of interest in Derek's old high school notebooks or basketball gear. It was in the box marked Memories that I discovered an envelope full of Polaroid photographs. The first few were of Derek smiling alongside his family and friends. But after that, the photos grew stranger. They seemed to show an overgrown trail or several of them leading into the woods around town. The photos had been taken in sequence. Each one was a little bit further down the trail and a little bit closer to nightfall. Each was a little bit darker and more blurry than the last, giving me a sense of dread that was difficult to explain. The final image was of a large, altar-shaped boulder resting improbably on top of a hill. Sunset had stained it an eerie blood red, and I would have sworn that I saw a pair of eyes in the cavern underneath. It was the final photo in the envelope, and behind it was a folded sheet of paper on which someone, probably Derek, had sketched a face. It was a face that I had seen before for a split second in my rearview mirror. I shuffled through the photographs again. I thought that I recognized one of the trailheads from a park in my neighborhood. It began right behind the soccer fields, but it was so overgrown with thorns and poison ivy that I had never once considered taking Katie for a walk there. Now, however, it seemed I didn't have a choice. There was no one that I could bring with me. Debbie was too unhealthy to hike, and Beth needed to stay at home to handle the police. All I had with me was a ball cap, a pocket knife, and a water bottle. It would have to do. It was early afternoon by the time I arrived at the park, which was about halfway between the Lee's house and my own. It wasn't impossible for the girls to have walked there in the middle of the night, but the thought of them wandering all this way, hypnotized in the dark, had chilled my blood. I couldn't tell whether these smudges in the wet grass were the remains of child-sized footprints, or whether I just wanted to believe that I was on the right track. The trail was just as weed-choked and lonesome as I remembered, but the dirt was hard-packed beneath my feet. Someone had at least been through here recently. I pushed uphill through the thick leaves until the path had finally opened at the hilltop. There was the boulder just like in Derek's photo and the dark gap underneath. A cool, musty breeze blew out from it, as though it led much further underground than it appeared to at first glance. My throat suddenly felt dry, like it was already coated with cave dust. I wished that I had brought a headlamp. I wished that I had told someone, anyone, where I was going. My phone had plenty of battery left, and there was no time to go back for more supplies. I would just have to trust that its flashlights would be enough. I took a deep breath and crawled through the triangle-shaped gap in the rocks. It was a tight squeeze, and what I found on the other side was no surprise. Campfire ashes, cigarette butts, crumpled beer cans, and graffiti. This place was known to the local teenagers, or at least it had been at one time. There was something unsettling about how dated all the refuse was, as though one day something terrible had caused the teens to simply stop visiting. The chamber was almost large enough to stand up in, but the pale, long-legged spiders on the walls made me reluctant to bring my head too close to the stone. I got down on all fours and followed the trail of trash even deeper into the cave. The further I went, the more cave seemed to be the wrong word. The space reminded me more of one of those Neolithic tombs built from boulders, the sort that people had constructed to honor their fearsome warlords, or perhaps to make sure that they stayed dead. Beneath the spray-painted tags in the next chamber, I thought that I could make out paintings made with ash. They showed kneeling human beings offering their own severed heads to a much larger figure, one with stick-like figures and a skeletal face. The passage beyond was the narrowest yet. I bashed my water bottle against the rock to frighten off the spiders before dragging myself through. Before long, I was pulling myself forward with only the fingers of one arm. And if I got stuck, I wondered, what then? The spiders' webs were littered with the hollow corpses of cave crickets, but they didn't seem picky. It wasn't a stretch to imagine them eating bits of my face while I squirmed, trapped in the dark. Up ahead, I saw something that made me resolve to keep going no matter what. A torn thread of Katie's yellow pajamas. I pressed on, finally emerging into a third larger chamber. There was no trash or graffiti here, but there was no sign of the girls either. In spite of all my fears and hopes, all I had discovered was a dead end. I wanted to cry or maybe bash my head against the bare stone walls. I collapsed against the rock, and that was when I felt it. That same faint breeze that I had noticed earlier, as though the cave itself was breathing. There was a split in the wall of the chamber, I realized, one that was invisible when looked at head-on, but obvious when searched for by touch. The boulder must to have cracked here, and from the cleanness of the break, it had happened recently. My stomach rolled. Something was buried here, I thought uncomfortably, and at some point in the past few years, it was finally able to break free. I turned sideways and inched through the gap. It was too tight for me to see what was on the other side, but as soon as I was through, something crunched beneath my foot. I aimed my phone's flashlight downward, hoping to be wrong but knowing that I wasn't. The bones on the chamber floor were so ancient that they crumbled into nothing beneath my feet. They seemed to have been pushed against the walls to make room for Derek Lee. His corpse was in an advanced state of decay, but there was no mistaking the boy that I had seen in so many missing persons posters. He was wearing the same clothes as the day he had disappeared. My heart skipped a beat at the sight of 4 smaller figures arranged in a flower petal pattern in the center of the chamber. I bit down the urge to shout Katie's name as I scrambled to her side. She was breathing softly as though she were just asleep. Sarah, Allie, and Becca were all in the same trance-like state. There was no sign of whatever had brought them here, but I wasn't taking any chances. I shook Katie gently, but she wouldn't wake. I thought back to what I had read on the printout from Derek's room. The ritual had used darkness, and true names had been important as well. Was it possible that the process might also work in reverse? I switched off my phone's light and spoke my daughter's full name out loud. When Katie's eyes snapped open, they seemed for a second as bright as a candle flame. "Dad," she whispered. "What?" I answered, leaning in close. "It's right above you." I had swept my flashlight around the chamber, but it hadn't occurred to me to look up. Now that Katie had said something, however, I could feel its presence, that monstrous thing from the cave painting outside. A dozen feet above me, a tall figure was hanging upside down like a bat. Katie was weak from all the miles that she had sleepwalked to reach this place, but at least she had the strength to stand up on her own. I was about to tell her to help the other girls when the thing overhead stirred. It was probably almost sunset outside, and if the thing above us was nocturnal, it was probably ready to awaken. I ran my fingers along the stone until I found the fissure again, and then helped Katie through. I followed behind, praying that I wouldn't feel a pair of long hairy fingers coiling around my neck. A plan was already forming in the back of my mind. I would warn the police that a kidnapper had taken the girls, offer no specifics except for a location and a warning that the perpetrator was dangerous. After that, there was nothing to do but hope that their weapons would be enough to stop the thing inside the hill. It was dusk by the time that Katie and I had reached the soccer fields. I had had to carry her during the final half of the journey, and with her arms wrapped around my neck, she had explained what had happened to her. That thing, it didn't hurt us, it didn't even touch us, but it's like it was eating my soul somehow, you know. Katie paused for air. Dad, when you woke me up, I wasn't sure who you were at first. I wasn't sure who I was either. In the park, a game had just wrapped up. Kids were standing in circles chatting, and coaches were putting away water coolers. I ran to them with Katie still in my arms, shouting for help. Just as the last crimson rays of sunset disappeared behind the hill, a nearby parent dialed 911. Someone brought a blanket for Katie and a folding chair for me. As we held hands and waited for the police to arrive, a cool wind swept out of the woods. It came from nowhere, blowing away soccer jerseys and snapping branches overhead. I had a terrible feeling that I knew what it meant. The thing in the hill had awoken and it knew that I had been inside its sanctum. Flashing red and blue lights appeared in the parking lot. 6 uniformed officers came running out of their patrol cars, along with the same 2 detectives who had come by my house before. Oh, what a surprise to find you here, Detective Stetcher sneered. He walked toward us slowly, hands tucked in the pockets of his overcoat, like he had all the time in the world. Detective Harris went straight to me, took down a description of the trail in the cave, and moved out with the rest of the officers. His partner, however, remained behind. There was something disturbing about Detective Stetcher's calm, almost mocking smile, as though he already knew what the others were going to find. It's a hell of a coincidence, the detective remarked. You turning up at just the right time to be a hero. Some people might call that suspicious. He stopped to light a cigarette and then went on. How'd you find this place, by the way? I gave a slightly more detailed explanation of the photos that I had found in Derek's things, but he still didn't seem satisfied. Oh, I feel sick. Katie clenched her stomach and doubled over in the cool grass. I bent down at her side, but something was off about the look in her wide hazel eyes. She was faking it. I don't trust him, Katie mouthed once my body was between her and Detective Stetcher, and I could see her point. Somebody on the police force had made sure that the printout was ignored during Derek's disappearance 2 years earlier. After we did the ritual, Katie continued, it was like that thing was inside our heads, controlling us whenever we fell asleep. It was like a bad dream, except you knew that all of it was really happening, and you couldn't wake up. If things had gone on like that forever. I thought I understood what Katie was trying to say. If Detective Stetcher had tried the ritual himself as part of his investigation, that thing might have gotten inside of his head as well. Heavy footsteps approached us. Everything all right over here? Detective Stetcher asked, with his hands on his belt. I told him that we were fine and that Katie was just still in shock. As I turned back to my daughter, I heard the click of leather sliding over cloth. Stetcher was taking off his belt. He was planning to strangle us with it. From up on the hill came a boom of gunfire. Detective Stetcher hesitated, the belt still gripped tight between his fingers. Sir, one of the younger troopers shouted. He dashed breathless out of the woods. His flashlight spun wildly. We found them, and your partner, he thought that he saw something up there. Some kind of animal. He discharged his service weapon. Detective Stetcher tucked the belt into his pocket and smiled. Well, that's good news. I'll call a medical crew and get them checked out. He jabbed a thumb at Katie and me. These two can go. Make sure they get home safe, all right. He watched us go. That sinister smile spread wide across his face. The young officer tried to make reassuring small talk as we drove, but Katie and I were too on edge to reply. We were too busy staring out the windows and up into the sky, waiting for the appearance of that awful face or a pair of enormous, leathery wings. The glowing golden light in the windows of our house made it feel like a fortress under siege. Beth ran out into the driveway and threw her arms around Katie and I. The young officer who had brought us home promised that he would be keeping watch from just across the street. Somehow that didn't make me feel any safer. Once Katie and I had washed away the filth of the cave, the four of us gathered around the big oak table in the kitchen. Maybe we just needed the comfort of our mealtime routine to know that even after all that had happened, we could still sit together as a family. While Katie ate ravenously, my wife and I discussed our next move. I think we ought to get out of town for a while, I told Beth. I've got some vacation days saved up and a change of scenery would do us all good. I'll start packing right away. Beth pushed her half-finished plate away and we both went upstairs, throwing clothes into suitcases like we were aristocrats fleeing some sort of revolution. We had mostly finished when Beth had paused and squinted out through the blinds. Honey, she called out, that cop's gone. Sure enough, the cruiser outside was empty, and a dark-colored car I didn't recognize was parked on the street a short distance away. The doorbell rang and Katie went to answer it. I wanted to scream at her to wait, but the words died in my throat. Something had landed on the roof, something that moved with heavy, scraping steps. Downstairs, my daughter opened the door. Officer? I heard her confused voice echo from the bottom of the stairs. Is everything okay? Glass shattered in the kitchen. Katie started to scream but then was silenced. I bolted downstairs to see Detective Stetcher reaching through our shattered back door with a gloved hand. Glass crunched beneath his boots as he stepped inside. There is no escape, he growled in a voice unlike his own. You will be with me forever. I glanced toward the front door where the junior officer had clamped a gloved hand over Katie's mouth. I suddenly felt sure that if these two people got my daughter out through that door, I would never see her again. I took off toward her, but Detective Stetcher was too quick. With surprising speed and grace, the big man tackled me to the floor, wrapped a plastic bag around my head and tied off its collar. At first, I had wondered about the gloves that both officers were wearing, but now I understood. They wanted to get rid of my family without making too much noise or a mess. Maybe the officer who had driven us home had performed the ritual with Detective Stetcher, or maybe he was only following orders. It didn't matter. Each breath brought less air into my lungs. The last thing that I ever saw was going to be shattered glass on my kitchen floor, and my daughter being dragged out into the night. Detective Stetcher grunted. His grip loosened enough for me to turn and see Beth, who had just swung a rolling pin into the side of his skull. Her blow would have dropped a lesser man, but the hulking detective just shook it off. He grabbed my wife by the wrist with one hand, and with the other, he tightened the drawstrings around my neck. There was a cry from the yard, and from the sound of it, Katie had managed to bite down on the junior officer's hand. She was doing exactly what we had taught her to do if anybody had ever tried to take her. Scream, kick, and raise hell. A neighbor's dog began to bark, and even with my face pressed into the linoleum, I could see lights flickering on in a couple of the houses across the backyard. Katie was giving Detective Stetcher and his accomplice the one thing that they were trying to avoid: an audience. My blood ran cold as I heard the wail of another siren outside. Just how many cops had this thing inside the hill corrupted? The echo of footsteps boomed down the hallway, and then suddenly I was free. Detective Harris stood with his weapon drawn, but it wasn't pointed at me. It was pointed at his partner. I don't know what the hell you think you're doing, he panted, but this is your only chance to give it up. While I fought to free myself from the suffocation bag, Detective Stetcher took in the situation. Katie was right behind Detective Harris, clutching a bruised arm. Stetcher's accomplice had his head against the wall and his hands up. These suspects were resisting arrest, he explained, although we may have let things get out of hand while restraining them. Detective Harris's pistol didn't waver. Detective Stetcher licked his lips. "Oh, come on, partner," he went on. "You wouldn't shoot a fellow officer, would you?" "I've seen things today that I never thought possible," Detective Harris spat. "You might say I'm warming up to the idea." Detective Stetcher seemed to pause and consider his partner's words, but I could see his fingers inching toward the half-broken porcelain bowl that our struggle had knocked onto the floor. I wanted to shout a warning, but I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. With beast-like speed, Stetcher flung the projectile at Harris's face and dived out of my broken door into the night. The crossbeams of the house groaned as something large took flight from the roof as well. For a while, no one spoke. When we finally moved, it was to care for our wounds and inspect the damage. "I don't know what I fired at up there on the hill," Detective Harris told us, "and I'm not sure that I want to know. I'll tell you one thing for sure, though. As soon as I can pull enough strings, a surveying crew is going to march up that trail and blow that thing's nest to high heaven. We'll call it removing a landslide hazard, or something like that. Whatever it takes to get the paperwork through." "Do you think you got it?" Katie had asked hopefully. Detective Harris shook his head. "I'm not sure, but whatever it is, I think it's too smart to return now that its layer's been compromised. And Stetcher is the same way. I'm willing to bet that the pair of them are already on their way out of town, and on the lookout for a fresh set of victims." I don't know whether Detective Harris was right or not, but none of Katie's friends have shown signs of strange behavior since that night. Sarah, Allie, and Becca don't remember much. For them, the whole thing didn't feel like much more than a bad dream. I should be happy, but I can't help but wonder about where the thing in the hill might have gone to. Maybe another family will be driving home from a school play or a late-night ball game in a few states over. Maybe they'll see flashing red and blue lights and they stop. A large middle-aged man who gets out of the car behind them won't be wearing a uniform, but he'll carry himself like a police officer and talk like one too. Instead of giving them a ticket, he'll point his weapon at the kids in the back seat and hand them a sheet of printer paper. "I want you to read this," he'll say, "and follow these instructions exactly." Susan Corndecki, Ray, Nelson Asada, Dice Creamy, Meek, Asher, Tom Magara, That One Woodsman, Sonic, GMD, Leon Knott, Takio Zarilla, Mina Lynn Kidder, SWAT, Damon McCory, Mark Norman, yours truly, Dino, Lunas TV, Wayward Son, Deuce X Miguelo, Big Country Allen, Pamela Shockley, Sleepy Shroomy, Caleb Windsor, Kathy McGuire, Paige Martin.
My name is Ray Morales, and I'm 38 years old. I do cleanup work for disasters, chemical spills, condemned buildings, places nobody else wants to go. It's dirty work, dangerous work, but it pays the bills. Barely. I've got a kid in college and an ex-wife who needs her alimony checks on time, so I take whatever jobs come my way. That's how I ended up in Ashton Ridge, or what's left of it anyway. They told us it was a terrorist attack. Bioweapon, chemical warfare. Some extremist group released contaminated materials into the town's water supply, and by the time the government could respond, everyone was dead or dying. 3,500 people. Gone. The whole town leveled to prevent the spread. That's the official story, at least. That's what they told the news, what they told the families, what they told us cleanup workers when we signed our contracts and our non-disclosure agreements. I believed it at first. Why wouldn't I? I've seen enough horror in this job to know that evil exists in the world, that people do terrible things to each other. But standing here in the ruins of Ashton Ridge, breathing recycled air through my respirator, I'm not so sure anymore. Something about this place feels wrong. Not terrorist attack wrong. Something else. Something worse. It's been exactly 1 year since Ashton Ridge was destroyed. The military came in with flamethrowers and explosives, burned everything to ash and rubble. They said it was the only way to contain the contamination. Now my company's been hired to do the final cleanup before they redevelop the land. We're supposed to scrape up soil samples, collect twisted metal, document everything, make sure it's safe for whatever comes next. Shopping malls, probably. Condos people have short memories. Give it 5 years and nobody will remember what happened here. But I'll remember. God help me, after what I found today, I'll never forget. The town is dead. I mean really dead. No birds singing, no insects buzzing, no wind rustling through grass because there is no grass. Just ash. Just dust. Just the skeletal remains of buildings reaching up toward a gray sky. My boots crunch through debris as I walk, and every sound echoes wrong, like the earth itself is hollow underneath me. My coworkers joke about ghosts, say they can hear voices in the ruins at night, but I think they're just trying to cope with how unsettling this place is. Nobody wants to admit they're scared. I'm scared, though. I've been scared since we arrived 3 days ago. There's something about the silence here that gets under your skin. It's too complete, too absolute. Even in other disaster sites I've worked, there's always some sign of life creeping back. Weeds pushing through concrete, rats scavenging something. But Ashton Ridge is sterile, like the earth itself is contaminated, like nothing will ever grow here again. And then there are the sounds. My supervisor says it's just wind tunnels formed in the wreckage, pipes settling, normal stuff. But I hear them at night in my trailer. Scraping, clanging. Sometimes what sounds like whispers echoing up from underground. My coworker Danny says the ghosts of Ashton Ridge are still working the night shift, still going about their routines, and we all laugh, but nobody laughs very hard. Today I was assigned to Sector 7, the residential area on the eastern edge of town, or what used to be the residential area. Now it's just foundations and ash piles, the occasional chimney still standing like a grave marker. I was taking soil samples near what my map said used to be Maple Street when I noticed something odd. One of the houses, or the crater where a house used to be, had a basement that looked more intact than the others. The floor had collapsed inward, but I could see concrete walls still standing, a doorway leading down into darkness. I should have radioed it in, should have waited for my supervisor to clear it. But I was curious, and curiosity is a dangerous thing in this line of work. I climbed down into the crater, using chunks of concrete as handholds, my respirator fogging up from my heavy breathing. The air down here felt different, colder, heavier, like descending into a tomb. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating ash-covered furniture, a collapsed staircase, the remains of family photos on the walls, their faces burned away. I tried not to think about the people who died here, tried not to imagine their last moments. That way lies madness in this job. That's when I saw it. In the corner of the basement, underneath a section of collapsed concrete flooring, there was a metal box. Fireproof by the looks of it, sealed tight with a combination lock. But the lock had been damaged in the blast, bent and twisted. I pulled at it and it came apart in my hands. Inside the box was a book, a diary, leather-bound, handwritten, somehow intact despite everything that had happened here. The cover was dusty but undamaged. Someone had written on it in black marker, the letters still clear. If anyone ever finds this, tell the world the truth. E.H. My hands were shaking as I opened it. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew what I was going to find. Maybe some part of me knew that everything I'd been told about Ashton Ridge was a lie. The first entry was dated October 15th, exactly 1 year and 2 weeks ago. The handwriting was neat, careful, the writing of someone who took their time, someone who wanted to be understood. It started like this. My name is Eli Harper. I'm 42 years old. I work as a mechanical engineer at the Ashton Ridge Water Treatment Plant. I have a wife, Mara, and 2 kids, Noah, who's 14, and Lily, who just turned 10 last month. I'm writing this because I need to document what's happening here. I need someone to know the truth, even if we don't survive this. Especially if we don't survive this. I sat down on a chunk of concrete and kept reading. The basement was cold and dark around me, but I didn't notice. I was somewhere else now, some other time, seeing Ashton Ridge the way it used to be. Alive. Whole. Not knowing what was coming. Eli Harper's words pulled me in, and I couldn't stop reading, even though some part of me wanted to close the diary and throw it back into the rubble and forget I ever found it. But I couldn't. I had to know. I had to understand what really happened here. So I read his first entry, and then the next, and the next. And with each page, the truth became clearer and more horrible. This wasn't terrorism. This was something much worse. This was intentional. This was planned. This was murder, sanctioned and executed by the very people who were supposed to protect us. And as I read Eli Harper's account of the final weeks of Ashton Ridge, as I followed him and his family through their descent into hell, I felt my hands start to shake and my stomach turn sour, because I recognized some of the names he mentioned, some of the government contractors, some of the procedures, and I realized with growing horror that this might not be over, that what happened in Ashton Ridge might happen again, might be happening right now, somewhere else, to people who have no idea what's being done to them. I'm going to share Eli's diary here, word for word, exactly as he wrote it, because he was right. The world needs to know the truth, and it starts with his first entry, written 3 weeks before everything fell apart, written before the sickness, before the dead started walking, before his family was destroyed. This is what Eli Harper wrote. Diary entry, October 15th. I'm not sure why I'm starting this diary. Mara suggested it last week when I told her I was having trouble sleeping. She said writing things down might help me process my stress, help me relax. I don't know if it'll work, but I figure it's worth a try. Work has been weird lately. Not bad exactly, just weird. About 3 weeks ago, these government contractors showed up at the plant, said they were from some federal initiative to improve water quality in rural communities. They installed these massive filtration units, big steel cylinders covered in biohazard warnings and labels I couldn't read. The lead contractor, a guy named Fisher, told us they were prototypes for advanced filtration systems. Said Ashton Ridge should feel honored to be selected for the pilot program. I stopped reading and looked around the dark basement, my heart pounding. The diary continued for dozens more pages. Eli Harper's neat handwriting filling every line, getting messier and more frantic as the entries progressed. I could see dried stains on some of the later pages, dark brown stains that looked like blood. I swallowed hard and kept reading, following Eli Harper into the nightmare that consumed Ashton Ridge, and knowing with absolute certainty that by the time I finished this diary, nothing would ever be the same. I turned to the next entry, dated 3 days after the first. The handwriting was still neat, still controlled, but I could sense unease creeping into Eli's words. The basement around me felt colder as I read, like the temperature was dropping with each page I turned. Diary entry, October 18th. Something's wrong with the water. I noticed it this morning when I ran my diagnostics at the plant. There's this smell, faint but definitely there, metallic, almost chemical, like pennies mixed with something sharper that I can't quite identify. I checked all the standard measurements, pH levels, chlorine content, turbidity, everything. All normal. Perfect, actually. Too perfect, if that makes sense. But the smell is there, and it shouldn't be. I mentioned it to Michael during our lunch break. He's been working at the plant for 20 years, knows the systems better than anyone. He just shrugged and said he hadn't noticed anything unusual. He drank straight from the tap in the break room, right in front of me, like it was no big deal. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Maybe those new filtration units are just releasing trace minerals or something harmless. Fisher and his team haven't been back since they installed the units. They sealed them up tight, told us not to touch them, and left. No follow-up, no maintenance checks, nothing. That's not normal for government contractors. They usually hover around for weeks, testing and monitoring. These guys just vanished. I haven't drunk the tap water in 3 days. I've been bringing bottles from home. Mara thinks I'm being ridiculous, but I can't shake this feeling. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but something tells me that water isn't safe. Diary entry, October 21st. People are getting sick. Doc Morrison's office has been packed all week. Michael told me that his wife Catherine had to take their granddaughter to see him yesterday because she wouldn't stop having nosebleeds. Just suddenly started gushing blood during breakfast, scared everyone half to death. Doc said it was probably just dry air, told them to use a humidifier. But it's not just her. Half my co-workers have called in sick this week. Vomiting, headaches, tremors. The local news is calling it a flu outbreak, telling people to stay hydrated and rest. Stay hydrated. They're telling people to drink more water. I tried to talk to my supervisor about it. Suggested we should maybe shut down the plant and inspect those filtration units, just to be safe. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Said the federal government wouldn't install contaminated equipment, that I was being irrational. He told me to take a few days off if I was feeling stressed. I'm not stressed. I'm terrified. Because this morning, 2 of my co-workers died. Tom Brenner and Linda Vasquez. Both collapsed at work within an hour of each other. Seizures, they said. Catastrophic brain hemorrhaging. Tom was 45 and healthy as a horse. Linda did marathons. And now they're dead. And men in hazmat suits came to collect their bodies before their families could even see them. Who does that? Who takes bodies away that fast? I came home early and told Mara everything. She listened, really listened, and I could see the worry in her eyes. She made me promise to stop going to work, said we could manage on savings for a little while. I agreed. But then Lily came home from school with a headache, said she'd drunk a lot of water from the fountain because she'd been thirsty all day. Mara made her drink 3 glasses from the tap at home because she thought Lily was dehydrated. I didn't stop her. God help me, I didn't stop her fast enough. I told Mara afterward that we need to only use bottled water from now on, no tap water at all, not for drinking or cooking or anything. She didn't argue. She saw something in my face that scared her. We're using bottles now, but Lily already drank the water. So did Noah. So did Mara. I'm the only one who hasn't, and I'm watching my family, looking for signs, praying I'm wrong about all of this. I had to stop reading for a moment. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the diary. In the darkness of that basement, I could feel the weight of what was coming, the inevitable horror that Eli Harper had lived through. I wanted to stop reading, wanted to close the diary and climb back up into the daylight and forget I ever found it. But I couldn't. I needed to know what happened next, needed to follow Eli's story to its conclusion. I took a deep breath through my respirator and kept reading. Diary entry, October 23rd. It's spreading faster now. The whole town is sick. You can hear people coughing through their windows at night, see them stumbling to their cars to drive to Dr. Morrison's office. But Doc Morrison died this morning. Heart attack, they said. But I know better. I saw him 2 days ago at the grocery store. He looked gray, exhausted, and his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his shopping basket. The pharmacy ran out of fever medication. The hardware store ran out of bottled water. People are starting to panic, and I don't blame them. Mara woke up vomiting last night. She spent 2 hours in the bathroom, and when she finally came out, her face was pale and her eyes were bloodshot. She said it was just the flu, that she'd be fine, but I could see the fear in her expression. She knows something's wrong. We all do. Noah's been complaining about headaches, and Lily keeps getting nosebleeds. I'm making them drink bottled water constantly, hoping it'll help, hoping we can flush whatever's in their systems out before it's too late. But I don't think it works that way. I think whatever was in that water has already done its damage. This evening, right before dinner, every phone in the house started screaming. Not ringing, that horrible emergency alert sound that makes your heart jump into your throat. We all grabbed our phones at the same time, and I already knew what I was going to see before I looked at the screen. I'd been expecting it, dreading it, knowing it was coming. Emergency alert. Ashton Ridge quarantine. Effective immediately. Biological contamination detected. All residents must shelter in place. Do not leave your homes. Await further instructions. Military personnel deploying to secure perimeter. This is not a drill. Lily started crying immediately. Noah went pale and just stared at his phone like he couldn't process what he was reading. Mara looked at me, and I saw everything in her eyes. The fear, the anger, the realization that I'd been right all along and that it was too late now to do anything about it. I heard sirens outside getting louder. I went to the window and pulled back the curtain, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Military trucks rolling down our street, dozens of them, soldiers in full hazmat suits jumping out and setting up barricades at every intersection. A helicopter thundered overhead so low that our windows rattled and picture frames fell off the walls. They were sealing us in, locking down the entire town like we were lab rats in a cage. And then I saw Catherine Michael's wife across the street. She came stumbling out of her house in her nightgown, disoriented, blood streaming from her nose and ears. She took 3 steps into her front yard and collapsed face first onto the grass. The soldiers watched her fall. They didn't move to help. They just stood there behind their barricades, watching through their hazmat suit visors, and I realized they weren't here to save us. They were here to contain us, to make sure whatever was happening in Ashton Ridge didn't spread beyond the town limits. We were already dead to them. We just didn't know it yet. I had to stop reading again. The diary entry continued, but my eyes were blurred with tears. I was sitting in the ruins of what might have been Eli Harper's basement, reading his final testament, and I felt sick. Catherine Michael had collapsed in her yard, and the soldiers had just watched. That detail hit me harder than anything else. The casual cruelty of it, the cold calculation. These weren't rescuers. They were executioners waiting for the sentence to be carried out. I wiped my eyes and forced myself to keep reading. Eli's next entry was dated the following day, and his handwriting was noticeably shakier. Diary entry, October 24th. Morning. I didn't sleep last night. None of us did. We could hear screaming outside, engines rumbling, helicopters circling overhead all through the night. Around 3 a.m, there was an explosion somewhere on the south side of town. The whole house shook. Noah came into our bedroom crying, and we all huddled together in the dark, listening to the chaos outside. Mara's fever is worse. She's burning up, shaking with chills 1 minute and drenched in sweat the next. I've given her every medicine we have in the house, but nothing's working. Lily's nosebleeds won't stop. I've been through an entire box of tissues, and every time I think it's finally stopped, it starts again. Noah seems okay for now, just the headaches, but I can see him getting weaker. He barely ate anything for breakfast. We're running low on bottled water. I counted the bottles this morning, and we have maybe 3 days left if we ration carefully. After that, I don't know what we'll do. I tried to go outside to check on Catherine across the street, see if she was okay, but there are soldiers at the end of our street now. When I opened the front door, one of them raised his rifle and shouted at me through his hazmat suit, told me to get back inside or he'd shoot. He meant it. I could see it in his posture, hear it in his voice. We're prisoners in our own homes. I saw Michael's truck in his driveway, The windows were covered in condensation. I can't tell if anyone's alive in there. I tried calling his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. The internet's been cut off. TV stations are all showing the same emergency broadcast message on loop, telling us to remain calm and await further instructions. My phone still works for local calls, but who's left to call? Everyone in this town is either dead or dying. Diary entry, October 24th, evening. Something impossible just happened. Something that can't be real, but I saw it with my own eyes, and Mara saw it too, and Noah saw it, so I know I'm not hallucinating. It was just before sunset. We were in the living room, trying to distract Lily from her nosebleeds by watching a DVD, one of her princess movies. The power's still on, thank God, though I don't know for how long. That's when we heard it. A voice outside, calling from Michael's house across the street. It was Catherine's voice, thin and wet-sounding, calling out, "Henry, Henry, please let me in." Henry is Michael's son. I went to the window and looked out, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Catherine was standing in Michael's front yard. The same Catherine who collapsed there yesterday. The same Catherine who'd been lying face down in the grass, with blood pooling around her head. She was standing now, swaying slightly, her nightgown covered in dirt and dried blood. But it was her movements that were wrong. Jerky, twitching, like a puppet with tangled strings. Her head was tilted at an angle that didn't look natural. And she kept calling for Henry over and over, her voice raspy and strange. "Henry, Henry, please. I'm so cold. Please let me in." The door to Michael's house opened. I wanted to scream, to warn whoever was inside, but my voice wouldn't work. Michael stepped out onto his porch. He looked terrible, gray-skinned and gaunt, like he'd aged 20 years overnight. He stared at Catherine for a long moment, and even from across the street I could see the confusion on his face. "Catherine," he said, "you were dead. I saw you. You were dead." Catherine lurched toward him, that awful jerking motion, her arms reaching out. "I'm so cold, Michael. So cold. Please help me." And then she was on him. I don't know how she moved that fast, but 1 second she was 10 feet away and the next she was on top of him, bearing him down to the porch. He didn't even have time to scream. She was biting him, tearing at his throat with her teeth, and the sounds, God, the sounds were horrible, wet and crunching, and Michael was trying to push her off, but she was stronger than she should have been, stronger than any living person could be. I pulled the curtain closed and turned away, but it was too late. Lily had seen it. She was screaming, and Mara was pulling her away from the window, and Noah was standing there frozen, his face white as paper. I locked the door. Locked every door and window in the house, checked them twice, then checked them again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the locks. Mara was in the corner of the living room, holding Lily, both of them crying. Noah finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, that's not possible. Dead people don't come back. They don't." But they do. I saw it. We all saw it. Catherine was dead, and now she's not, and she just killed Michael. And I don't understand what's happening, but I know we're in terrible danger. I know we need to stay inside, stay quiet, and pray that whatever's out there doesn't notice us. Diary entry, October 25th. They're everywhere now, the dead ones. I can see them from the upstairs window, stumbling through the streets, lurching from house to house. They move wrong, all twitchy and jerking, but they're fast when they want to be. And they're hungry. God, they're so hungry. Last night we heard screaming from the Johnsons' house next door. It went on for maybe 10 minutes, then stopped abruptly. This morning I saw 3 of them come out of the Johnsons' front door, their faces covered in blood. One of them was Mr. Johnson himself. I recognized his flannel shirt, his beard, but his eyes were wrong, empty, like there was nothing human left inside. More people are turning. Not everyone who dies comes back, but enough do. And when they come back, they're not themselves anymore. They're something else, something twisted and wrong and hungry. The military hasn't come to help. The helicopters still circle overhead, but they don't land. The soldiers at the barricades just watch, making sure nothing leaves the town. I understand now. This isn't a rescue operation. This is containment. They're going to let us all die, let us all turn into those things, and then they're going to burn Ashton Ridge to the ground and pretend it never existed. We have visitors now. 3 survivors from nearby houses managed to make it here this morning. There's Nora, Henry's aunt, who barely escaped when those things broke into her house. There's Calvin, a teenage kid from down the street whose parents are both dead. And there's Teresa, a nurse from the clinic who saw what happened to the patients there before she ran. We've barricaded ourselves in as best we can. Furniture pushed against the doors, windows covered with plywood that Calvin and I found in the garage. We're rationing our food and water. Teresa says that whatever's causing this, it's in our blood now. Everyone who drank the water has it in their system. It's just a matter of time before we all turn. But some people seem to resist it longer than others. She doesn't know why. Mara's getting worse. The fever won't break, and she started talking to people who aren't there. Seeing things. Last night she kept insisting that her mother was standing in the corner of our bedroom, watching us. Her mother's been dead for 6 years. Lily's nosebleeds have finally stopped, but now she won't stop shaking. She just sits in the corner, hugging her knees, trembling. Noah's trying to be brave, trying to help me reinforce the barricades, but I can see he's terrified. We all are. I can hear them outside right now, scratching at our doors, moaning. Sometimes they call out in voices that sound almost normal, pretending to be neighbors asking for help. But we know better now. We don't open the doors. We don't respond. We just hide and wait and pray for morning. Diary entry, October 28th. We needed supplies. The bottled water ran out yesterday, and we've been drinking boiled rainwater that Calvin collected from the gutters. It tastes like ash and metal, but it's all we have. The canned food is almost gone, too. We were starving, desperate. So this morning, Teresa and I decided to make a run to the grocery store 3 blocks away. Maybe there'd be something left, something the others hadn't found. We left before dawn, when the dead ones seemed slower, less active. Nora stayed behind with the kids, and Calvin kept watch at the upstairs window with a baseball bat. I thought we'd be okay. I thought we could do this quick and quiet and get back before anything went wrong. We made it 2 blocks before we saw them. A group of 5 clustered around something in the middle of the street. They were feeding. I won't write what they were feeding on, but the sounds will haunt me forever. Teresa grabbed my arm and we tried to backtrack, move quietly around them, but one of them heard us. It was Mrs. Kim from the bakery, or what used to be Mrs. Kim. Her face was gray and sunken, her mouth stained dark with blood. She turned her head toward us with that horrible jerking motion, and then she screamed. Not a human scream, something higher, shriller, like a signal. The others stopped feeding and looked up. Then they were running at us. That impossible speed, their movements all wrong but so fast, so terribly fast. We ran. Teresa was faster than me, younger, and she pulled ahead. I heard footsteps behind me getting closer, and I knew I wasn't going to make it. Then Teresa tripped, just caught her foot on a piece of broken concrete, and went down hard. I stopped. God help me, I stopped and turned back for her. She was screaming for me to run, to leave her, but I couldn't. I grabbed her arm and hauled her up, and that's when one of them hit me from the side. It was a man, someone I might have known once, but I couldn't recognize him anymore. He knocked me down and his hands were on my shoulders, his face coming down toward my throat, his teeth bared and bloody. Teresa hit him with something, a piece of rebar she'd grabbed from the ground, hit him so hard his skull cracked and he fell sideways. But not before his teeth caught my shoulder, tearing through my jacket and shirt. The pain was instant and electric, and I felt blood running hot down my arm. We made it back to the house somehow. I don't remember much of the run back, Just Teresa pulling me along, my vision blurring, my shoulder on fire. When we got inside, Mara saw the blood and started crying. Teresa cleaned the wound as best she could, wrapped it in gauze. But we all knew what it meant. I was bitten. I was infected. It's only a matter of time now before I turn into one of those things. I can already feel it starting. A fever building in my blood. A strange humming under my skin. Teresa says I have maybe 3 days before the change starts. Maybe less. I don't know what happens then. I don't know if I'll still be me, or if I'll become like them, hungry and mindless and wrong. Mara won't leave my side. She's sitting next to me now as I write this, holding my hand, crying quietly. Her own fever has gotten worse. She's barely coherent most of the time, drifting in and out of consciousness. Last night, she woke up screaming that there were spiders crawling under her skin. It took both Noah and me to calm her down. I know what's happening. The infection is taking her, just like it's taking me. We're both dying, just at different speeds. I've moved into the guest room. Told the others it's to keep them safe in case I turn while I'm sleeping. Really, I just don't want the kids to see it happen. Don't want them to watch me become a monster. Noah keeps coming to the door, asking if I'm okay. I tell him yes. Tell him I'm fighting it. Tell him I'll be fine. But we both know I'm lying. Diary entry, October 30th. Something terrible happened today. Something I can barely write about, but I have to document it. I have to make sure someone knows what we lost here. Mara was getting worse. The hallucinations were constant now, and she'd started trying to hurt herself, clawing at her arms, saying she needed to get the bugs out. We'd been keeping her in our bedroom, the door locked from the outside, someone always watching. It was the only way to keep her safe, keep everyone else safe. But the fever was burning her alive from the inside, and I could see in her eyes that she was barely there anymore. This morning, Lily was crying outside the bedroom door. She wanted to see her mom, wanted to tell her she loved her. Nora was supposed to be watching her, but Nora had fallen asleep in a chair, exhausted. We're all exhausted. We barely sleep anymore, taking shifts watching for the dead ones outside. Lily found the key. I don't know where she found it. Maybe she'd been watching where we hid it. She unlocked the door and went inside. I was in the guest room when I heard Mara scream. Not a human scream. That same horrible shrieking sound the dead ones make. I ran out of the room. My shoulder wound tearing and bleeding again, and I got to the bedroom just in time to see what was happening. Mara had Lily on the floor. Her hands were around our daughter's throat, squeezing, and Lily's face was turning purple. Mara's eyes were empty, rolled back in her head, and she was making that terrible keening sound. I tackled her, pulled her off Lily, and Mara fought me like a wild animal, biting and clawing. She caught my face with her nails, tearing 4 deep gouges from my eye to my jaw. I managed to throw her back against the wall, and that's when I saw Lily. She wasn't moving. Her throat was crushed, bruised, and swollen. Teresa ran in and tried to help her, tried to do CPR, but it was too late. Our daughter was dead, killed by her own mother, killed by the thing that used to be Mara. Mara lunged at me again, still making that awful sound, and I didn't think. I just reacted. There was a hammer on the dresser, left there from when we'd been boarding up windows. I grabbed it and I swung and I swung and I swung until she stopped moving, until the screaming stopped, until there was nothing left but silence, and blood, and my wife's body on the floor next to my daughter's body. Noah found me there an hour later, sitting against the wall covered in blood, the hammer still in my hands. He didn't say anything, just sat down next to me and cried. We buried them in the backyard that evening. Teresa said a few words that I can't remember. Calvin helped me dig the graves. Nora held Noah while he sobbed. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Everything inside me feels dead now, hollowed out, like I've turned into something empty. That night, Calvin ran. Just took what was left of our food and left while we were all sleeping. I don't blame him. He's a kid. He's terrified. He wanted to survive. I hope he makes it. I hope he finds somewhere safe. Teresa went looking for him the next morning. She didn't come back. It's just me, Noah, and Nora now in this house full of corpses and ghosts, and I can feel the infection spreading through me like fire, and I know I don't have much time left. Diary entry, November 2nd. Nora died 3 days ago. She just stopped breathing in her sleep. One moment she was there, the next she was gone. Maybe it was mercy. Noah and I moved her body to the basement. We couldn't bury her with the others because the dead ones are everywhere outside now. They swarm the streets day and night, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. We can hear them constantly, scratching at our walls, moaning, calling out in voices that sound almost human. Sometimes I hear Mara's voice among them. Sometimes I hear Lily. I know it's not really them. I know it's just my mind breaking apart, the infection eating away at my sanity. But it sounds so real. Noah is all I have left. My boy. My beautiful boy who's trying so hard to be brave, to take care of me even though I'm the one who should be taking care of him. He brings me water and what little food we have left. He checks my wound every day, changing the bandages even though we both know it won't help. The infection has spread up my arm now, dark veins running under my skin like black lightning. The fever comes and goes. Sometimes I'm lucid, sometimes I'm not, sometimes I don't know which is which. Yesterday Noah fell sick. Started with a headache, then vomiting, then the fever. He tried to hide it from me at first, but I could see it in his eyes. The same glassy look Mara had, the same trembling in his hands. He's lying on the couch right now, wrapped in blankets, shaking with chills. He keeps apologizing, saying he's sorry, saying he should have been more careful. But it's not his fault. None of this is his fault. It's mine. I worked at that plant. I helped distribute the poisoned water to every home in this town. I killed them all. I killed my own family. This morning, Noah started coughing blood. I cleaned his face with a damp cloth and told him everything would be okay, but he's 14 years old and he's not stupid. He knows he's dying. He knows we're both dying. Around noon, he asked me to do something for him. Asked me in a small, broken voice that made my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. He said, "Dad, when it happens, when I start to turn, I need you to stop me. I don't want to become one of those things. I don't want to hurt anyone. Promise me you'll stop me." I promised. God help me. I promised my son that I would kill him. What else could I do? I can't let him turn into one of those creatures. Can't let him become a mindless, hungry thing that wears his face. I'd rather die 1,000 times than see that happen. We're in the basement now. It's safer down here, quieter. I can still hear them upstairs. The dead ones that have broken into the house, stumbling through our rooms, knocking over furniture. But they haven't found the basement yet. Noah is getting worse by the hour. The fever is burning him alive. He keeps drifting in and out of consciousness, mumbling things I can't understand. Sometimes he calls for his mother. Sometimes for Lily. It breaks something in me every time. I'm writing this by flashlight because the power finally went out this morning. We're sitting in the dark, and I can hear Noah's labored breathing next to me, and I know I'm going to have to do the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm going to have to keep my promise. Diary entry, November 3rd, morning. Noah died last night. He stopped breathing around 3 in the morning. I held him until the end, stroking his hair, telling him I loved him, telling him he was brave and strong and the best son anyone could ask for. His last words were, "I love you, Dad." Then he was gone. I sat with his body for 2 hours, waiting to see if he would come back like the others, waiting to see if I would have to keep my promise. But he didn't move. His eyes stayed closed. His chest stayed still. Whatever killed him, whatever was in his blood, it took him completely. He didn't come back as one of those things. Small mercy. I buried him next to his mother and sister. Had to wait until just before dawn when the dead ones are slowest. Dug the grave with my bare hands because I couldn't find the shovel. The dirt is cold and hard and mixed with ash from the bombing I can hear in the distance. The military is burning the outskirts of town, trying to contain this, trying to make sure it doesn't spread beyond Ashton Ridge. I'm alone now. Everyone is gone. My family, my friends, my neighbors, everyone. This house that was once full of life and love is now just a tomb. I can feel the infection taking me. My shoulder wound has turned black, and the dark veins have spread across my chest, up my neck. I catch glimpses of myself in broken mirrors, and I don't recognize what I see. My eyes are bloodshot, my skin is gray. I look like one of them. Maybe I already am one of them. Maybe I'm just too stubborn to admit it. But I'm still me, still thinking, still aware. And I need to understand why this happened. I need to know the truth before I'm gone completely. This morning I left the house for the first time in days. The streets are a nightmare, bodies everywhere, some moving, some not. Burned out buildings, crashed cars. The smell is indescribable. Rot and smoke and something chemical that burns my lungs. I made my way back to the water treatment plant. Had to hide from patrols of those things 3 times, pressing myself into doorways and holding my breath until they passed. The plant is abandoned, windows smashed, doors hanging open. I went inside, back to the control room where those filtration units are still humming, still running on backup power. And that's when I heard them. Voices. Real human voices, not the moaning of the dead. I hid behind one of the main tanks and listened. There were 2 men in hazmat suits checking equipment, taking readings from the filtration units. They were talking. I could hear every word. The first man said, "Phase 3, testing confirmed." Neural overstimulation reached critical mass exactly as projected. The second man replied, "Any survivors?" "Negative. They all turned or died. The few who showed resistance were neutralized during cleanup operations." "Good. Retrieve the water samples and neurochemical data. Dismantle the filtration units. HQ wants all evidence removed before the demolition team arrives." "What about the bodies? There must be thousands." "Burn them. Burn everything. The official story is terrorist bioweapon attack. Keep it simple. The media's already running with it." They kept talking, discussing dosages and infection rates and mortality percentages like they were talking about a science experiment. Not people. Not a town of 3,500 human beings with lives and families and dreams. An experiment. That's all we were. Lab rats for some government program testing neurochemical weapons. The water was poisoned deliberately. The filtration units weren't meant to clean the water, they were meant to contaminate it. And my job, my work at the plant, had distributed it to every home, every school, every business in Ashton Ridge. I killed them all. I poisoned my own family. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward and knocked over a metal pipe. The sound echoed through the plant. The men in hazmat suits stopped talking. One of them said, "Did you hear that? We're supposed to be alone here." I ran. Didn't look back, just ran through the plant and out into the ruined streets. I don't know if they followed me. Don't care. I made it back to my house, and I'm in the basement now, writing this by flashlight. And my hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the pen. They did this to us. The government did this. Poisoned us. Watched us die. Watched us turn into monsters. And now they're going to burn the evidence and lie about what happened. They're going to call it terrorism and the world will believe them and they'll get away with it. And they'll do it again. Somewhere else. To someone else. More test subjects. More casualties in whatever war they're fighting that we don't even know about. Diary entry. November 4th. I don't have much time left. I can feel it humming under my skin now, that awful vibration that never stops. The infection has spread everywhere. My thoughts keep slipping away from me, dissolving like smoke. I'll be writing something, and then suddenly I can't remember what I was trying to say. Sometimes I lose hours and don't know where they went. The fever is constant now, burning me up from the inside. I look at my hands and they don't feel like mine anymore. The fingers twitch on their own, jerking and spasming. My reflection in the broken bathroom mirror shows something that barely looks human. Gray skin stretched tight over bones, eyes that have gone yellow and bloodshot, teeth that seem too sharp. I'm becoming one of them. I can feel the change happening, feel my humanity slipping away piece by piece. But I'm still here, still aware, still Eli Harper, at least for now. I need to finish this, need to write it all down before I lose the ability to write, before I lose the ability to think. Someone needs to know what really happened here. Someone needs to tell the truth. To whoever finds this diary, you need to understand. Ashton Ridge wasn't destroyed by terrorists. It wasn't a bioweapon attack by some extremist group. It was our own government. They poisoned the water supply with experimental neurochemicals designed to overstimulate the brain until it shuts down and then restarts wrong. They created those things, those reanimated corpses that hunt and feed and never stop. They did it deliberately. They watched it happen. They let us die. We were test subjects in an experiment we never consented to. 3,500 people, men, women, children, families, all of us murdered so they could gather data on their weapon. And when it was over, when everyone was dead or turned, they burned the evidence and blamed it on terrorists. They're probably already planning the next test, the next town, the next group of unsuspecting people who'll drink poisoned water and never know what's killing them until it's too late. You have to stop them. You have to tell everyone what they did here. Don't let them do this again. Don't let my family's deaths be meaningless. Don't let Ashton Ridge be forgotten. The water. Don't drink the water. Don't trust them when they say it's safe. Don't trust the government contractors who install new equipment and tell you not to ask questions. Don't trust the officials who say everything is fine even when people are dying. Question everything. Fight back. Survive. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. I'm sorry I couldn't save my family. Couldn't save my town. I'm sorry I helped distribute the poison that killed them all. That guilt will follow me into whatever comes next. Whatever I become. I can hear them upstairs now. More of them. Breaking through the barricades. They know I'm down here. Maybe they can smell me. Maybe the infection in my blood calls to them. I don't know. It doesn't matter anymore. My hand is cramping. The pen keeps slipping from my fingers. I'm losing control. Losing myself. When I stop writing, that's when I stop being me. That's when Eli Harper dies and something else takes his place. To my family, if somehow you can hear me wherever you are, I love you. I'm so sorry. I failed you. I should have protected you. I should have known something was wrong sooner. I should have gotten us out. I love you. I love you. I love you. The humming is so loud now. It's all I can hear. My thoughts are fracturing, breaking apart. I can't hold on much longer. To whoever finds this, tell the world the truth. They'll say it was terrorists. Don't believe them. We were the test. They'll do it again. Don't drink the diary entry ended there, the final letters trailing off into an illegible smear. I sat in the darkness of that basement, the diary open in my trembling hands, and I felt something break inside me. The last page was stained with dried blood, brown and flaking. Eli Harper's blood. His final words, written as he lost himself to the infection, as he became something other than human. I closed the diary carefully, like it was something precious and fragile. And I looked around the basement. This was where he'd hidden it, sealed it in that fireproof box, his last act as a thinking, feeling person, his testament, his truth. The ruins of Ashton Ridge suddenly felt different around me. Not just a disaster site, a mass grave, a crime scene. 3,500 people murdered by their own government, and I was standing in the evidence of it. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. My supervisor's voice came through, distorted by static. Ray, you there? Take your lunch break. There's a water truck at base camp. Stay hydrated, it's hot out there, and don't drink from any of the old pipes, they're still flushing the lines. I stared at the radio. My mouth went dry. Flushing the lines. The same words Eli had overheard those men say a year ago. The same procedures. I looked down at my hands. In the dim light of my flashlight, I could see small blisters forming along my forearms, following the lines of my veins. I'd been here 3 days, drinking water from the truck, eating in the mess tent, breathing the air. How long had it been contaminated? How long had I been exposed? The pieces fell into place with horrible clarity. The sealed-off sections we weren't allowed to enter. The blood tests they'd required before we started work said it was just standard procedure. The non-disclosure agreements that threatened legal action if we talked about anything we saw here. The way my supervisor kept telling us everything was safe, even though nothing grew here, even though the silence was unnatural. This wasn't cleanup. This was Phase 4. We were the next test subjects. A soft sound echoed through the basement. Footsteps above me, slow and shuffling. Then more footsteps. Then scratching at the basement door. I grabbed the diary and shoved it inside my jacket. My hands were shaking worse now, the blisters spreading up to my elbows. The fever was starting. I could feel it, that same burning Eli had described, that humming under my skin. The basement door creaked open. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the gray light. It was Danny, my co-worker, the one who joked about ghosts working the night shift. But Danny was moving wrong. That jerking, twitching motion. His head tilted at an unnatural angle. His eyes were empty and yellow. "Ray," he said, and his voice was wet and wrong. "Come upstairs. The supervisor wants to see you. We have new equipment to install. New filtration units." He took a step down the stairs, then another. I backed away, my heart hammering, looking for another exit. But there was none. Just concrete walls and that single stairway where Danny was descending toward me, moving with that horrible twitching gait, his mouth opening to reveal teeth that seemed too sharp. I thought about Eli Harper and his family, about Mara and Lily and Noah, about 3,500 people who'd trusted their government and died for it. I thought about the diary in my jacket, the truth that needed to be told, and I thought about the water truck at base camp, and all my co-workers drinking from it, and how many of them were already infected, already changing. How long until they sent us home? How long until we spread it to our families, our communities, our cities? This wasn't containment, this was expansion. They were weaponizing us. I grabbed my flashlight and swung it at Danny's head as he reached the bottom of the stairs. The impact made a wet, cracking sound, and he stumbled backward, but he didn't fall. Just turned those empty eyes toward me and smiled with too many teeth. I ran, pushed past him, up the stairs, into the ruined house, and out into the gray daylight. The other workers were scattered across the site, shambling between the rubble piles. Some of them saw me and started moving in my direction with that same jerking motion. I ran toward the perimeter fence, toward the military checkpoint, and I could see the soldiers watching me through their hazmat suit visors. I reached the fence and grabbed it, shouting for help. One of the soldiers raised his rifle and pointed it at me. Not at the infected workers behind me. At me. "Step away from the fence," he said, his voice muffled by his mask. "Return to the work site. This is your only warning." I looked down at my arms. The blisters had burst, dark fluid leaking from them, and I could see black veins spreading under my skin like cracks in glass. I was infected. I was contaminated. I was evidence they needed to destroy. The soldier's finger tightened on the trigger. Behind me, I could hear the shuffling footsteps of Danny and the others getting closer. I was trapped, infected, dying. But I still had the diary. I pulled it from my jacket and held it up. "I know what you did," I screamed at the soldiers. "I know about the experiment. I know about the neurochemicals. I have proof." The soldier lowered his rifle slightly, spoke into his radio. "We have a contaminated subject with classified documentation, requesting immediate extraction and containment." More soldiers appeared. They surrounded me, rifles pointed, hazmat suits gleaming. One of them stepped forward and held out a gloved hand. "Give us the diary. Come quietly and we'll get you medical treatment." I looked at that outstretched hand, looked at the rifles, looked at the infected workers behind me getting closer. I thought about Eli Harper's last words. Tell the world the truth. I threw the diary as hard as I could, away from the soldiers, away from the fence, toward the highway beyond the checkpoint. It landed in the dirt 30 feet away, its leather cover clearly visible. The soldiers turned to retrieve it, and I ran in the opposite direction, back into the ruins, drawing them away from the diary, giving it a chance to be found by someone else, someone who could get it out, someone who could tell the truth. Gunfire erupted behind me. I felt something punch into my back, hot and sharp, and I stumbled and fell. More shots, pain exploding through my chest, my legs. I crawled behind a collapsed wall and pressed my hand to the wounds, but I knew it was over. The infection was in my blood. The bullets were in my body. I was dying. But as I lay there in the ash and rubble of Ashton Ridge, I saw something that made me smile. A civilian truck had stopped on the highway beyond the checkpoint. Someone was getting out, walking toward the diary lying in the dirt. A woman with a camera around her neck. A reporter, maybe, or just a curious passerby. She picked up the diary, opened it, started reading. The soldiers saw her too late. By the time they reached her, she was already running back to her truck, the diary clutched to her chest. She drove away before they could stop her. Eli Harper's truth was free. The world would know. As my vision darkened and the fever burned through my brain and I felt myself slipping away, I thought about water, clear and cold and deadly. I thought about all the towns I'd never visit, all the people I'd never warn, and I thought about that reporter racing away with the diary, and I prayed she'd have the courage to tell everyone what she'd read. My last thought, before the darkness took me completely, was a warning that echoed Eli Harper's final words. Don't drink the water. Don't ever drink the water.
There was a garage sale in my area, which kind of blew my mind because in my newly minted life as an adult woman, 4th year of college and all, I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen one in my waking life. I started a bucket list filled with some rather plain activities as my newest attempt to fight the creeping depersonalization that plagued me for the last year or so. Once I saw the sale, I immediately added it to my list, then went there, crossed it off. The sale itself was pretty pathetic. Nothing I would ever do a double take for in a store. Nevertheless, I spotted a single cartridge for an N64 game that I hadn't seen before, and wanting to come back with some sort of trophy, I snagged it. The old lady running the show squinted with her glasses on while I held it out in front of her. "Must be Marty's," she said, looking rather confused. $10? Cue that stock cha-ching sound, and off I went home to my half of the apartment that I was sharing with Kelsey. Kelsey, with the fantastic self-discipline, the great diet, the great job, my true foil and polar opposite. I entered. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and measuring her food because being hot was its own full-time job, and I respected it. I lingered for 5 seconds so she knew to ask about my day. "How was your day, Sadie?" she eventually asked. I leaned over the dining table chair and said, "I went to a garage sale." "Uh-huh. Why?" "It was on my bucket list." "Why do you have a bucket list? You're like a baby." "Because, life? It's fleeting, and the human experience, or whatever." She squinted. "Is it an actual physical list?" "Word doc, mainly," I said back, and then some scribbles in my notebook. I couldn't tell if she was impressed or confused. "Okay." I thought twice about whether I should flash her the cartridge as proof of purchase, but it didn't seem that she found the venture as impressive as I did, so I opted against it. "Gonna go veg out in my room," I said, skirting off. "Have fun in there," she said. Never liked her saying that all the time. It felt pervy. I closed the door to my bedroom. Sparkling lights hung across the wall to celebrate the arrival of winter. Amidst the cozy hideaway, with too many throw pillows, was the piece de resistance. The small wooden TV stand in the corner, with CRT TV on top and N64 tucked neatly below. Did I ever play it? Nope. Did it make me happy to look at? Yes. My usual special dead-eyed scrolling between the apps while eating Takis and smoking a bowl lasted me about 30 minutes before a familiar dread kicked in. I went to the old TV, cleared off some dust, turned off most of the lights, leaving only the wall one twinkling, and checked to see if the old console, product of an era I just missed and yet still had some bizarre nostalgia for, was set up properly. When all seemed well, I grabbed the cartridge, game titled Covington's Redemption, blew into it once for good measure, and stuck it into the console. Switched it on. After a few seconds of lag, static lines flickering across the screen, indicating something was happening, then in big blue letters the title screen appeared. Covington's Redemption. Press start. I pressed the button, and immediately I was met with a presence sitting across the table in a small kitchen. Wrinkled lines marked his face. He had a suit on. Looked like he was a middle-aged man. "What's your name?" he asked. A dialogue box appeared for me to type a response. I used the joystick to painfully, slowly select the letters LeBron. I inhaled, smoking with my free hand. "Thank you for visiting me, LeBron." "You are so welcome," I said out loud, taking another puff and coughing. I can't believe I'm not out shooting threes right now. "Yes," I talked to myself, so sue me. "It appears you're coming to me at a dire time in your life," he continued. "For show." Smoke rings. "Perhaps you came here thinking I could send you on a grand quest." "Word." "The truth is, I'm not who you think I am." He stood up from his table. "I'm not your quest giver. Rather, I'm a lawyer named Larry with psychic powers." I started laughing, here to battle cruelty in this twisted world. "Oh my god. This game is fucking dog shit," I said, beaming. I heard Kelsey's bedroom door close, whether in response to my noise or just a random occurrence, I wasn't sure. "And I'm grateful," his dialogue continued, "that you followed the spark of curiosity within you, the spark of instinct, for it was the right call." Dramatic pause. "For there is something coming after you. And if the fixed course of time isn't disrupted via psychic interference, your life will be taken in 3 days. And I had to be honest, melodramatic suit guy was fun enough, but my TikTok-trained attention span was starting to waver. If you're ready, he went on, I could take you to my vision room so that you could see the gravity of the situation for yourself. I pressed A to continue because I was high enough that cutting him off felt rude. The scene shifted to a dark back room with not much else in it other than a bulletin board. Larry grabbed his head and focused, while a swirling sound effect played. He clenched his face, fingers pressed against his temples, until finally, an image manifested on the board. The photo of another character, a woman. Trail of blood pooling from her mouth, eyes lifeless. This is the condition you'll be found in 3 days, he said. I squinted. My reddened eyes, in tandem with the slowed brain processing power, took a while to digest the image. The girl had a beige, cable-knit sweater, not unlike the one I was wearing. Crescent moon tattoo on her inner wrist, just like mine. Blonde hair, loose, brushed out waves. Huh. Outdated 3D model aside, she looked a lot like me. Like a lot. His dialogue box stayed frozen, awaiting my button press to continue. Putting my pipe on the counter, I grabbed my phone, reread the cartridge's title, Covington's Redemption, and Googled it. No relevant results. I double-checked the spelling, added more words to the search like N64 or video game. Still nothing. I put everything down, rushed to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, stared at my face in the mirror. You're okay. Back to my room, I could feel my heart start to bounce in my chest. I re-grabbed the controller and let his dialogue continue. LeBron, if the sight isn't making it clear, you're going to be murdered. I'm just tripping out. To stop the perilous train barreling towards you, it's going to require a few key things, he said. He struck a pose, fist clenched in front of his face. You're going to need to be cunning. The fuck, man, I whispered. A wistful pixelated look off to the side. You're gonna need to be brave. I just need to breathe. And finally, you're going to need to overcome your personal demons. Put them to bed once and for all. He steadied himself. What I suggest first and foremost is... I turned the N64 off. It's a bad trip. I needed to go to bed. So I did. Rallying together as many excuses in my head as needed for why this all just had a logical explanation and why I needed to call it a night early, amidst bouts of tossing and turning and sobriety creeping back in, I snuck in what felt like a fever dream of a nap. Eyes to the clock. 1 a.m. I rebooted the game. Take 2. Come on, normalcy. I was greeted with that same bulletin board, psychic lawyer man beside, and the image of the deceased girl, except this time, her clothes had changed. It still looked like me, just now dressed in the same jammies and Care Bear sleep shirt that I just put on. Feeling all sorts of fucked up, I finished reading Larry's note this time. What I suggest first and foremost is that you pay close attention to your surroundings over the next 24 hours. Then he rested his head in his hands. I grow weary. I tried to get anything more out of him, but he just kept repeating, I grow weary, after that. Struggling to place if there was anything else immediate to do, and with exhaustion already swallowing me, I just turned the system off again and tried to dream away the cosmic dread. It was the next day, and after some truly terrible sleep, I was back at my university forcing myself into the routine of classes. Clutched in my hand was a small pocketbook for jotting down any noticings, as per the recommendations of one psychic Larry. My eyes shot from mark to mark in the hallway. People, students, with their micro-expressions, laughing at dumb shit or stressed out. I wasn't actually going to die, right? This was all just like, it was a joke or something, right? Sadie, I heard a familiar voice trail behind me, and then Connor fell into step beside me. Longtime friend. Reliable friend. Looked way too much like that nice guy from 13 Reasons Why. Hey, I said. Whoa, he said, looking at my face. What? No, nothing. No, what is it? Oh, it's just that, you look tired. And I know you're not supposed to say that to a woman, so I stopped before I said it. Yeah, the hive mind that is all women. I smiled, shrugged it off. It's fine, just I couldn't sleep. Shortly after, we were in our lecture hall for class. The professor rattled off about concentric zone theory, and I paid attention to my surroundings. Across the room, I spotted Bryson, my ex. My big dumb ex. We locked eyes. We ended on less than cordial terms. He wanted to open our relationship, and I granted him permission. He could sleep with anyone in the world but me. Notebook suddenly opened. I scribbled Bryson, spiteful polyamorous. Connor whispered, sneaking bites of his terrible-looking lunch. I know it's not my place to, give advice, but if you couldn't sleep because you were smoking a lot of pot, then you should monitor that. I mean, I know that it can impact anxiety and motivation, and my eyes fixed on the boyish professor next. Professor Warden. A flicker of eye contact. Given my major, criminology, was his area of expertise, it wasn't a surprise that I'd had multiple classes with him already. My mind flashed to that choice encounter that we once had, making out in the closet in first year during my professor phase. The fun ended when he said, "Sorry, I can't," not with students, ironically delivered after sticking his tongue down my throat for 20 minutes. It was never brought up again. The memory faded, and I looked at Connor and nodded so he could feel heard while continuing his monologue. Pocket journal reopened. Professor Warden. Scared I'd get him fired 4 years later? I just think, Connor said, that if you tried to go cold turkey for even just 2 weeks, it could really... The hours whipped by without so much of a show for them. And then we were back in the hallway. And I was continuing once again to scan for any hints at the cause of my impending erasure. So, what are you doing after this? He asked me. Probably just gonna hide away in my room. Oh, there's a new bar by Sundale. I was thinking about checking it out. If you wanted to. I'm really, low energy today, Con. Maybe another time. Oh, yeah, for sure, he said. Another time then. We split up. I gave him a wave, and he sheepishly scratched the back of his head and walked away. When he was out of sight, I secured my little notebook again. Connor. Wee bit obsessive? I scratched it out as soon as I finished writing it. Maybe just a bit too puppy dog for that, he was. I was about to close the notebook when I caught something in my peripheral. Someone peeking around the end of the hall, watching me, dressed in all black, hood pulled up over their head. My walk quickened into a run. I rounded the corner and saw... They were gone. I looked behind me, and then around, a little dazed. And then I wrote that down too. I arrived back at the apartment marred with sleeplessness. Kelsey was in the kitchen, meal prep, always, slicing and dicing so elegantly, too elegantly. Hey, I said. Hey, how was classes? I stared. Swish, swish, swish at the cucumber on the cutting board. You're really good at that. Good at what? Cutting with a knife? Thanks? Where'd you get your training? Subtly left me. Knife training. You mean my 2nd grade level cutting skills? Yeah, I got them by cooking for myself and not door dashing every second meal to my apartment door. Kelsey wasn't having it, so I went to my room and booted up the game. Covington's Redemption title screen. I pressed the start button on my controller. And we were back. Psychic lawyer at Leary was at the kitchen table, head in his hands. He looked like he'd been struggling. Sustenance, he said, in the form of crunchy bread with peanut butter spread atop. I need it if I'm going to continue with my visions. Was this motherfucker about to send me on a fetch quest? LeBron, please, he continued. Exit my quarters. I believe there's a store on this street that sells what I need to keep going. I was finally able to control my character. I went up to Larry to see if he had any more dialogue. I received a paltry ... in response. I maneuvered out of Larry's place, down the steps, and onto a city street. I shifted down the block, spotted storefronts without clear entries. Ding. My phone IRL. I checked it. Connor again. Text popping up on screen. Hey, sorry if I came on too strong about the pot smoking thing. Back to the TV. Bizarre-looking strangers walked by. The sounds of my shuffling over gravel, until finally I spotted a store that I could actually enter. Carver's Diner. Before I made my way inside, I spotted something interesting in the corner of my eye. Someone peeked out from behind an alley about a block down. A character dressed in dark layers, black ski mask on. What the fuck? I shifted focus, directing myself to the alley to find, just like in real life, there was no one around the corner. The music in the game started skipping. The ambient outdoor sounds paired with something new, and off-key choral rise, ghost-like voices coalescing into an uncomfortable hum. I stepped down the alley, the hem growing louder, my hair standing on end. I didn't like this fucking game. And as I did step, I clocked a small square panel in the wall. I removed it, ducked down, and crawled inside. I inched through the passageway, slow movements in the crawl space leading to an eventual resolve. A room. Lanterns piercing the dark. I spotted a chessboard on the ground. All the little pieces caught fire, all except for one. There was a statue of a winged, crown-bearing figure. Hollow eyes with a serpent coiled around one arm, and a staff gripped in the other. I looked over to spot me. The same me that I'd seen on Larry's bulletin board as an image, but now fully formed, strung up against the wall, bound lifeless, with bloody tears shedding. As I tried to keep a grip on my own sanity, I spotted the words, "Not yet," appearing from a text box that I think came from the statued figure before the screen exploded into static, white noise, distortion, and then cut to black altogether, with a single new dialogue box appearing. Anniversary. And then I was right back in front of Carver's Diner again. This time, traumatized as all hell, I simply went into the store while scribbling horrifying, demonic shit into my pocketbook. Still in the game, I watched Larry happily chomp down on his peanut butter and toast. It was the one item at Carver's that I had enough in-game cash to purchase. Sighing, I sparked up IRL. Kelsey called me earlier to join her in watching The Girlfriend. I was now in my holing up in my space and ghosting my roommate era. I continued pressing the A button as the psychic lawyer kept biting, new dialogue boxes appearing that simply said, over and over again. Exceptional, he said, finally done, face flushing like an Animal Crossing character. Simply exceptional. He wiped his face with his suit sleeve and then seemingly locked the fuck in. 2 days. I have a little over 2 days now. I'm aware, I said aloud. You did what I told you, didn't you? He said. You've paid attention? Yeah, fuck, Jesus. What I find very important, he continued, in pursuing justice is understanding motives, not getting thrown off by distractions or red herrings. Kelsey opened the door, completely ignoring our please knock policy. She flopped onto my bed. You're being antisocial as fuck, she said. Larry's dialogue continued on. I tried to pause it, but none of the buttons worked. Privacy, please. I'm just feeling a little low-key today, I said. You're squandering your potential, Missy. She scrolled on her phone. I would do so much with my life if I had rich parents. Amidst the distraction, my eyes only briefly caught some of Larry's words. Re-examining. Digging deeper. You're playing old video games? Kelsey asked, intrigued. Is this Mario Kart? Does this look like Mario Kart? Larry, meanwhile, energized, brought it back to his secret room with the bulletin board again. Let's start with another one of my visions. Face drawn tight, fingers pressed to his temples again. Having Kelsey there felt akin to when your parents walk in during a movie sex scene. An image appeared on the board, an animated close-up of a mouth opening, a forkful of lettuce being lifted to its teeth. The animation continued looping. I can now see the mouth of your killer, he said proudly. The fuck am I supposed to do with this? Oh, murder mystery game, said Kelsey, plopping down to the ground beside me. Yeah, it's super fun, I said, beyond depressed. So obviously killer likes salad, said Kelsey. I mean, yeah, but so what? We call that a hint, Sadie. Write it down. I sighed, slowly grabbing my pocketbook, flipping it to an empty page and scribbling into it with a pen. She ruffled my hair annoyingly and bounded off. God, what the fuck, dude? I said. Go outside, she called back. Touch grass. Use your trust fund baby privilege for good. Go easy on the ganja. I got up and shut the door. Back to Larry. So, he continued. Tell me, LeBron, does this mouth ring a bell for you? No. Tell me more about today, he said. And then, it just lingered on him. He stared at me, no input screen to painfully slowly type an answer into. Realizing we were far beyond reason now, I decided to talk directly to the TV. I mean, nothing crazy at first. Earlier today, the weirdest thing, some dude, watching me from the hallway. That said, in the game, he squinted. Never mind the insanity that the words I was speaking seemed to be translating. His expression at the game was worrisome. I rephrased. Near your place, there was an alleyway and another creepy guy there was more... Anyway, then I saw some satanic shit. I don't know. The journey grows dangerous, he said. Yeah, no shit, man. He spent some time, fingers pressed to his lips, thinking. Should I leave? Or he finally landed on something. Go somewhere. Have a drink. Okay, I said. Near your place? I corrected again. Or in my area. In your area. God damn it. I grabbed my phone, text from Mom. Come home for dinner this week. It was one of a string of messages from her I hadn't responded to yet. Needed to get to that too. I texted Connor. Received a response back in 0.2 seconds. Then I headed out, striding past Kelsey, who was splayed out in the living room sofa watching TV. Where are you going? To touch grass. As I left, I fought the urge to scribble her name into my notebook. Salad is pretty universal, right? So, what do you think? Asked Connor from across our booth at the bar. Yeah, it's a bar, so that's cool. It was the place that he had pitched earlier today. He was the only person I knew who'd go out with me on a Wednesday night on short notice. They've got this, really cool cocktail. He flipped the page. I was thinking of trying it later. A server came by with our drinks. He smiled as she put them down. She left. I took a sip of the blue buck that he'd offered me before I got here. He knew my favorite, and I handed it to him. So, he continued as my eyes flitted from patrons to barkeep, paying attention, as always. You don't usually come out with me. I smiled. I just needed air, I think. Air and ambience. Didn't feel, safe doing it alone. So you feel safe with me? He said, almost lighting up. and yeah, I said, dodging. Just wanting to try a new place out. People watch maybe. If that makes sense. More darting in my eyes. I tried to keep it subtle while cursing my 64-bit lawyer for putting me into this awkward situation. Silence. So, I'm worried about you. I'm fine. Please stop. Not about the weed smoking. I'll drop that. Thank you. But how you don't ever, like, you know, talk about, like, I swallowed. He continued. And I'm sorry for even bringing it up, but we're friends, and I mean, we never discuss it, but I can tell it's weighing on you. It's not weighing on me. Your sister. Like, that's so, it's just the fact that you're trying to find yourself again, and I did say ambient night. It's fucked up. You know what happened to her? I just want you to know that I'm here for you as you try to, you know, move forward. Thanks, Connor, truly. I'm gonna go piss. I saw his expression shift as I got up and headed for the ladies' room. Inside, I felt my heart race a bit. I didn't need this right now. I steadied my breathing in front of the mirror. A memory flashed across my eyes. Waking up late to missed calls from everyone in my family. I was supposed to be with her that night. I left the bathroom. I spotted Connor still goofily cycling through the cocktails menu. My attention shifted to the bar's back area, past the mostly empty kitchen where I saw another person in a ski mask, dressed in all black, peering through the back door that led outside, eyes fixed on me. Beyond the stirring mix of sensations within me, fear, my heart sinking, anxiety pounding, came something a little different. Anger. I rushed towards the figure, blitzing past confused restaurant workers and kicking the door into the back alley, only to see not one, but two masked people sprinting away, far out of reach. I caught my breath, looked down, and saw something that might have fallen from one of their pockets. A small totem carved from black stone, no bigger than a thumb. Wings folded tight around its body, a serpent coiled along one side, looking a bit like the strange statue I'd seen in the game. I pocketed it, still reeling. Connor showed up behind me. Sadie, what are you doing back here? Nothing. I needed some air. I'm not feeling that great. Sorry, for mentioning it. It's fine. I'm guessing that you wanted to go home. Yeah. Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. If you'd like to join this list of names that I frequently mispronounce, you can check the description in the link down below, which I really appreciate because this helps me, one, keep the lights on, and two, helps me pay authors for the stories that you hear on this channel. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Britta Crow, Haltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estabine, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Salstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samar Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psychotic, Sully Man, Tully Sue, Team Leo 76, The Demented Voice in Your Head, The Chavez Brothers, The Ginger Bros, Tommy Walters, Viceroy Scorn, William Wellington, Your Bro Keegan, Zabub, and Shadow Gardens. A huge thank you to you guys, everybody who shows up in the description down below, and honestly, anybody who can pledge even just like $1 a month. You guys are absolutely amazing. I cannot continue doing this channel without you, and your support means the world to me. And that goes to everybody, not just on Patreon, but honestly just you guys out there who just subscribe, those guys out there who are just listening or putting on the nonstop radio live stream while it's running in their sleep. I appreciate you guys greatly, especially during this kind of rough time for me. Having you guys around, and I mean this wholeheartedly, it is incredible. So, hey, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. And as always, folks, sweet dreams. I stared with confusion at my phone. The rest of the gang were all in on this Monopoly game. I swear to God, if you get free parking, I will literally kill your stupid face, said Evelyn. Ravi rolled the dice in his hands. Come on, sweet baby Jesus. Just need a 4. He dropped them onto the board. Fuck, he said, probably biffing it like always. I tried to make sense of it. Just one word on my screen. Black text on an all-white background. Rather classical-looking font. Hide. I tapped rather impatiently on the expensive black rectangle. The text wouldn't disappear. AJ, Evelyn called, like a teacher busting a student. You're fucking addicted. Play board games like a normal human adult. Yeah, Sorry. A few more desperate finger pecks at the screen. Then I turned to holding the power button down for an extended period. With my free hand, I grabbed the dice, rolled a 3, landed on B&O Railroad. After 2 seconds of thought, fuck railroads, I said. Of course, we weren't animals. If someone didn't want to buy a property, that was fine. No auctions or any of that nonsense. House rules. Back to the phone, as Hero on my left took the cubes and prepared to drag his sorry little shoe across Go to collect his $200. A minute with the power button didn't do anything. We were entirely factory reset territory. I contemplated borrowing Ravi's laptop to Google whatever the fuck this might have been. I felt the apartment rumble, albeit just for a split second, as if we were on the edge of an earthquake. I tensed briefly. The background noise from the TV, "No one wants this autoplaying on Netflix," disappeared following the faint sound of the flicker of static. Ravi was the first to get up. "I don't," he said, talking slowly as if not to jinx it. "I don't think that was an earthquake." He examined the TV, confused at the outage. He checked the wires. Shouldn't be the breaker. I don't have that much stuff plugged in, do I? I grappled with the sad, likely hacked state of my phone, and that weird word staring me down. "Damn, that's fucking weird," I heard Hero say, half laughing. Head lifted. "What?" I asked to catch Hero turning his phone to me. His home screen, too, had been replaced by black text atop white. Hide. Evelyn, as anti-technology as it comes, had properly clocked this reprieve as her time to quickly respond to long outstanding texts. "The fuck?" she said. "What is this?" At my confused look, bordering on scowl, resting scowl face, she flipped her phone around and showed me the damage. It was the same on hers. I grew a bit nervous. "Ravi, where's your phone?" I asked him. "Sure, it's somewhere," he said, still tinkering with the TV. Likely not due to any of his troubleshooting, it flashed back to life. Red power light at the base, blinking steadily. A simple message now appeared on the big screen. "Hide?" Ravi asked, grabbing the remote and pressing buttons to switch back to Netflix. But nothing was registering. "Dude," I said. He turned around and I showed him my phone. Hero and Evelyn showed theirs. "That's..." He looked back at the TV, then back at us again. "Wait, how is that possible?" Is that like an Amber Alert?" Hero asked. "I mean, I guess, but that's like a push notification. This is like completely overtaking the screen." Ravi's brows furrowed. "Well, different hardware, too." "A hack?" I asked. He shrugged. "It's kind of a weird hack, no?" "Government experiment?" Hero asked. A thought came over me. I walked to the balcony, slid the door open, stepped out onto it. Eye of Sauron the city from Ravi's 14th floor apartment. In the neighboring apartment towers, most of the units had blinds down, curtains closed. The view unshuttered, however. I felt like that guy from Rear Window. It contained strangers staring perplexed at their phones, at their computers. The sides of bolt-to-the-wall TVs, barely visible to me, displayed the same white background with text atop it. What I was seeing, everyone else was seeing. The others joined me on the balcony. "Whatever it is, it's at least hit this block," I said. I looked down at the city streets. Most of the people below caught in a similar holding pattern of standing frozen, heads fixed to their devices. "I guess we don't have anything to call the cops with?" said Hero. "I'm sure they're aware." Maybe wait it out until they fix it. I nodded, and yet I could tell Evelyn was a bit perturbed, forcing magnetic thoughts to imbue her silence with weight. Thoughts? I asked her. I mean, should we do it? She asked. Do what? Hide. Hide where? I don't know. I mean, we're already in my apartment. I'm sure it's good enough, right? A pause. Let's not lose our heads, Ravi continued. This is nuts, but it's not... I mean, it's not like... literally hide, right? Hiro clicked his fingers. What if it's viral marketing, like for a movie? Hiro was the necessary but unintentional levity. Hacking our phones so we can't use them? I don't know if that's in Linegate's purview, man, I said. Then head turned to Evelyn. But hide? The flicker in her eyes more than meant that she'd sided with the light bulb in her head. She returned to the inside and got to exploring Ravi's apartment carefully. What are you doing? Ravi asked, trailing. Hiro and I followed. I don't care if we look stupid. It could be a warning. Maybe something's happening, she said. We're in a box, basically, said Ravi. We're fine, Ev. But the fucking thing, she motioned to the TV, then to her own phone, says hide. Maybe it's that literal. She continued scouting, finally settling on the sliding closet in Ravi's room, the best she could come up with in his 600-foot quarters. I'll do here unless you think there's better. Evelyn, Ravi stressed. She shuffled in, past hung garments, scooched to the edge to make space. I'm going to close the door soon, and if you're all really my friends, you'll join me. Awkward silence, until Hiro chimed first. I mean, I guess it's good to be safe, right? He went for it. Second-guessed for a second, then committed to entering. You guys get the luxury of laughing at me forever if I'm dumb. Win-win, she called while Hiro wedged in beside her. A compelling argument, certainly. Begrudgingly, I followed, tucking in next to Ravi's dress clothes. There was still room for him inside his own closet. Fucking hell, he caved, joining last, sliding the door closed to introduce darkness. I went back to my phone. Still that classical font. Still that mandate. How long do we have to stay in here? Ravi asked. 5 minutes, she said. Yeesh, he tagged. And then we sat in stillness for a while. Distant tick, tick, ticks of the clock in the living room, bringing down the blood pressure a tad. It all felt silly. Kind of fun. Remember when we went camping at Sunlight Groves? Hiro asked. Glamping, Ravi certified. Ev thought she saw a bear. A bear and his cub, Hiro laughed. It was dark. It fucking looked like a bear, she said, half laughing herself. I heard noises, too. Bears at Sunlight Groves, he said again. Saddest patch of trees in America. Guys, shut up. We're here, so let's commit to the bit before the Conjuring doll gets us, said Ravi, surprisingly not bitterly. We kept our traps zipped for another minute. Eyes on my phone again. Hide. Nonsensical, all of it really, but in a way that was starting to sit more and more uncomfortably with me. What do you think it is? Hiro whispered. I shook my head. Evelyn with a light shrug. Ravi with a deep inhale before speaking. I mean, obviously it's sophisticated, he said, voice low, like it's... Yeah, it's obviously something. I waved my phone. My bank is on this and it's bricked now, basically. I'm fucked. They'll figure something out, said Ravi. Powerful knocks at his apartment door all of a sudden, thundering. Hey! A voice called, muffled through the wall. Ravi, you there? Evelyn braced. Who is that? Skinwalker, obviously, replied Ravi. Kidding, my neighbor Monica. Evelyn reached across me and Hiro to tug at Ravi's sleeve. Are you positive? Yes, and I should probably get it. You said 5 minutes. Yeah, but I'm being a pretty trash neighbor right now, he replied. The knocking persisted, so did the words. I have this weird thing on my phone. Brad has it too. He says hide? TV, same thing. Computer, same thing. I don't know how to reach anyone or what to do. The neighbor trailed on. Ravi blew air out his nose. All right, this is stupid. I'm gonna... No! Said Evelyn. But then all of a sudden, he stopped. We all stopped. I felt something. Something very real. No knocking anymore, at least I couldn't hear anything. Not the tick of the clock, nor the soft rustle of us against clothing. It was like the world was holding its breath, like there was a presence right outside the closet. Then the sting of static in my ear before it passed. Whatever it was, the feeling dissipated, the sound returned, and I sneaked a glance at my phone. The word hide was gone, and replacing it was my home screen. The silence between the four of us was uncomfortable. Did you feel that? Evelyn finally whispered. No one said anything. Ravi outstretched his arm yet again to slide the door open, but his hands were shaking. You can do it, I whispered. I think we're good. He steeled himself, looking very much like he was crossing some sort of internal threshold. He pulled the door aside, revealing his room exactly as we'd left it. We took it in. I'm going to answer, Monica, he said, with not a whole lot of vigor in his voice. Getting up and creeping out of the room, the rest of us followed, stopping in the living room while he continued to the door. I went to Twitter, searched hide, and sorted by new. Evelyn, meanwhile, grabbed the remote from the stand and turned the TV, now hideless, on and maneuvered through the Roku channels. What are you looking for? Hiro asked. Just like a live channel, I guess, she replied. The news? My scrolling wasn't yielding anything of help or insight, though it was clear via the confused posts from seemingly around the world that the scope of whatever happened was global. My focus shifted to Ravi, who was standing on the welcome mat, eyes pressed against the door's peephole. He hadn't moved in quite some time. Everything all right, man? I asked. He didn't reply, just stood there, frozen. I approached slowly. I heard him croak. I reached him, patting him on the shoulder and urging him to detach from the door viewer. He finally did, leaning against the wall at first before slowly sliding to a seat on the floor. I peered into the hallway through the hole. Outside, his neighbor, the one knocking, looked like she'd been skewered, decimated, an explosion of blood in the hallway. What? I felt a buzz on my phone. I pulled it out. Again. Before I could even process, I heard Ravi and Evelyn react. There's another one. It says again now. I turned to see the foreboding word on the TV. Oh, fuck. Should we hide again? Hiro called. Much like Ravi, I was shell-shocked. AJ, what do you think we should do? Evelyn? I said, trying to force the word out of my mouth. You had a good instinct the first time. What do you think? How much time do you think we have? She asked. How much time passed between I first saw the word hide and when we felt that presence in the closet? It might have been 10 minutes, I heard Ravi mutter, almost lifeless. I don't... Then Evelyn interrupted herself. Wait, what did you just see outside? She started approaching the door. I stopped her. I don't think it'll be good for you to see it. Are you serious? Yes, I said immediately, realizing that lying might have been smarter. We can't assume that we have the same amount of time, Ravi added. I went with my pitch. Do we try the same spot? Hiro started pacing, thinking, tapping his foot. If we think about it, it said hide, and we hid. Now it says again, and obviously that means that whatever happened, it's gonna happen again. He gave us a look as if he could see in our drained expressions what was waiting on the other side of the door. That's a great recap, man, I said. What I mean, he said, struggling, is that when you'd play as a kid, if you kept picking the same spot over and over, eventually it'd catch up to you. Are we really trying to apply some sort of logic to this? Ravi mumbled. Evelyn fortified herself. I think he's right. It's nuts. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but we need to operate on gut. And gut tells me we pick a better spot this time. But spots make it sound like we should split up, I said, looking around, slowly realizing that the limited real estate we had to work with meant this suggestion made more sense than I would have liked. I turned to Ravi. Where should we all go? He shook his head, palmed his forehead a few times as if to slap himself back to reality. We do, he started, thinking. 2 under my bed, he grimaced, letting neurons collide in his mind. 1 of us in the utility closet, the other laundry closet. He got up and pointed. 1 of the closets was right behind me. Life in him again. Now! My eyes flitted to Hero and Evelyn, who ran to the bedroom. Ravi gave me a nod before entering the laundry closet and awkwardly squeezing in with a washer and dryer, closing his door. I entered the utility closet and closed mine. Rather, I tried to. The door wasn't clicking shut. Fuck, I said. Ravi, the door's not... But then I fought the urge to say anything more. If time was up, I'd compromised my spot. Hell, compromise his spot too if I kept talking. I tried a few more times to get it closed, then I committed, terrified out of my mind, to grip the handle and hold the door shut. I tried to keep my shaking hand and quickening breath in check as the silence took over again. Complete silence, and then that presence. I felt a light tug at the door. I kept my hold firm, but didn't try to overpower, didn't want to completely give it away. And again, it stopped. The feeling disappeared, and I waited 15 seconds before sneaking a look at my phone to see that the again warning was gone. I heard the sound of Ravi's door swing open first. I followed with mine. He was emotional. I forgot that door's fucked. I got scared, man. You're all good. It's all right, man. I know. I even heard you call for me. I didn't know. I panicked and I thought we're alive, man. It's all right. And immediately I remembered it wasn't just us. Evelyn and Hero. Right, he said. We rushed to his bedroom. Nothing. At first. The 2 hadn't emerged yet. For a moment, the horrifying thought that we'd be pulling their corpses out from under the bed rushed past me. Guys, I said. Coast is clear. Quick. Silence. For quite some time before they finally shuffled out in one piece, alive. Okay. As they shifted from crawl to bend to standing, I wanted to hold everyone, just for a second. I felt a newfound appreciation for life in their faces and personalities. Another buzz on my phone. I took a look. Break time. I let out a sigh of relief and showed the message to the others. I guess that's good, Evelyn said. A second to catch our breaths after this fucking craziness. But then what? Ravi asked. Is it just gonna continue? We walked into the living room together, nervously. We haven't even gotten a single second to wrap our heads around this, Evelyn said again. Something in me didn't seem right. It didn't feel good. Hey, Ev, how did you know that we should have stayed in the closet for 5 minutes? Hero asked, somewhat pointedly. I clocked minor annoyance on her face at the question. I didn't know anything. It was a guess, but I mean, yeah, you guys were fucking lucky I was here and pushed for it because fuck were you all being stubborn. Hero wore a strange expression as he looked at her. All right. Sounds like you want to say something more? She said. Why would I? What makes you think I'd... Ravi interrupted Hero by stepping between the two of them. Holy hell, keep your heads on, people. But as he said it, and maybe it was just an aberration in my mind, but I couldn't help but feel something significant stir within me, something really inflame, as if even though his face was straight, he was concealing some sort of inner smile at what was happening. Hero, I think you're focusing your skepticism in the wrong direction, I said. Ravi's expression turned irritated, which all but confirmed it for me. I don't know if you want to be mad at the person that saved us the first time, I said, trying to make a point by motioning to Evelyn, but as I looked at her, something felt wrong there too. I contained it. Or rather, the person who wanted to open the closet door. And then something even more obvious hit me. Wait, Ravi, you tried to kill me! And all of a sudden, I was glaring at him. My temper rising by metric tons every second, as if it was all starting to make sense. Evelyn and Hiro joined me. Ravi looked incredulous. I already admitted that I fucked up with the door. I confessed to you. Why were you trying to make things worse? I was trying to calm them down. And then noticing us approach him, he backed towards the kitchen cabinets. He pointed at me. You were on your phone when this first happened, he said, as if he were having his own revelation. You were waiting for it to start. That's an insane fucking misdirect, I said, positive that I couldn't trust him. But as my eyes turned to Evelyn and Hiro, I realized I couldn't trust them either. Couldn't trust anyone. Still, Ravi absolutely needed to be the first to go, the first to be disposed of. He grabbed a knife from the cupboard and held it out to us, and only the smallest thought in the back of my mind was telling me that we were being toyed with, that it was so incredibly obvious that whatever this was, it had a handle on us. But unfortunately, that understanding was academic for me at best, as I kept finding string after string of thought and emotions connecting, everything adding up, the logic sound, my emotions inflamed. Break time, Evelyn said. It's breaking us. Of course she would know that though, right? If she was in on it. We all looked at her. I watched for a sudden movement from any of the traitors. These bastards, even a millimeter shift would get past me. It's overriding us. It's flooding us with anger that isn't ours, and real as it feels. She faced her phone at us, beckoning us to read it clearly. Break time. We can't fall to it. And that small, grounded part of me took over, even though I was sure with everything in my soul that she, Ravi, and Hiro were the source of everything that was happening. Ravi's grip on the knife tightened as he and the rest of us remained in the bizarre equilibrium of our four-way standoff. It's all of you, I thought to myself, before I felt a lightness take over me. Like an insatiable hunger fading, or extreme fear dissipating when you realize that noise in your room wasn't a person, but rather something knocking over. When my feeling of unrest and paranoia were gone, my phone screen once again returned to its default background. It's hard to describe how it felt. Lucidity? Shame? I looked at Ravi sadly. His head hung low as he put the knife back in its place. Hiro turned to Evelyn first. Sorry, he said. Then to Ravi, sorry. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry too. You're welcome, assholes, Evelyn. We deserve that. That was fucking insane, Ravi said. Like a fucked up roller coaster ride. That totally wasn't me, Hiro said. Like, something was in me, and it was... It's okay, man. I was getting tired of saying it, and certainly I, out of everyone, didn't deserve to impart forgiveness. Anyway, after where my own head was at 30 seconds ago. We need to, write something down. We are susceptible, don't forget, started Ravi. We just need to remember to keep our heads on, I interrupted. Remember. But I think that the fear that again would pop up on our phones drove him to start rummaging for some paper, start scribbling some words on it, while the rest of us tried to soak in the reprieve of nothing happening. Every half second, a luxury. I wanted to say sorry another 20 or so times, something I was sure wasn't a feeling unique to me. I feel like I'm losing myself, I said. It felt like I was in a dream at this point. Yeah, said Ravi, yeah. Hiro said, looking at us carefully. Probably all gonna die. Should be say our words, I guess? Don't talk like that. How many people do you think are dead? Hiro asked. I went to the TV, temporarily free yet again from 1 or 2 word mandates, turned it on, toggled through the home page until I found the live stream of a soccer game. One fixed camera angle, everyone in the stadium torn apart. People on the field within frame eviscerated. I returned to the homepage, navigating in an attempt to find a different live program. I clicked on what appeared to be a news channel I hadn't heard of before. The side of an empty desk appeared. Wires leading under the desk made me think that perhaps the anchor was hiding under it. "We're trying to report," he said. "Knowing that the signal is going to cut out, I've survived so far. Survived whatever exactly this might be, but the carnage from footage I've seen is extensive. I strongly recommend..." The broadcast was interrupted by the new word. Seek. Again in classical lettering, and the screen cracked, then shattered with a loud pop, sending bits of glass onto the floor. As did the screen on my phone that I'd placed on the coffee table, as did the phones in Evelyn and Hero's hands too, reactively dropping to the floor by the pair, a weak bounce before settling. I panicked. Seek, I said desperately, trying to jolt my brain to the task. "Maybe something out of place," Evelyn said. "What if we have to find what's killing everyone?" said Hero. I started, but I couldn't even muster up close to a sentence. I ran to the balcony outside to see what was something obvious to look for. In the sky, in the city, what I spotted on the neighboring high-rises was blood-stained curtains, unrecognizable bodies where blinds were lifted, and as my eyes darted from spot to spot, a lead. A small TV in one of the apartments. The screen looked unbroken, a word on it I couldn't make out. 5 letters was the best I could see. "It's the screens," I said. "We need to find a screen that still works." I ran back into the living room. "Does anyone have binoculars?" They all looked at me. "Why the fuck would anyone have binoculars?" Ravi said. There's a screen, I think, in one of the other apartment buildings. It's working. There's a word, but I can't see it. We need to find another one. I don't know. I ran to Ravi's office. Computer screen. Broken. Fuck. Grabbed his laptop. Shattered. Nope. I nervously tapped my chest with the fingertips of both my hands, while the rest desperately searched for something viable, too. Did I have to run to the other apartment? Would there even be enough time? How would I even get in? And then, like a bolt out of the blue, it hit me. "Ravi, where's your phone?" His voice is a little confused. I don't know, man. I lose it all the time. "Find it!" "You really think that's it? We're looking for a functioning screen. It's the only one we haven't ruled out yet." I turned to Hero next. "Check out the other apartments on this floor. See if any of the doors are unlocked. If they are, go inside, check everything. Phones, laptops, TVs, doesn't matter. See if there's a message intact on any of them." "On it," he said, rushing to the door, opening it, freaking out at the body in front of it, nearly tripping, then composing himself and rushing into the hallway as the door closed behind him. We tore Ravi's apartment next. "Couch cushions. Where'd you usually lose it?" I asked. My head peeked under the bed, peeked into counters alongside Evelyn desperately. I don't know, man," he said. "It's stupid, but sometimes I literally just chuck it across the room. Helpful. Supremely helpful." In the bathroom, I looked in the medicine cabinet, then back into his room, into his closet, checked the pockets of all of his pants. I started to feel the inevitable looming. This was the one that was going to kill us, wasn't it? "I love you guys," I heard Evelyn say almost under her breath, like she could feel it too. No tangible ticker counting down, but a feeling in my chest, a train closing in with us tied to the tracks, Ravi running to the TV stand, looking behind, then under books, under shelves. And I was back in the living room again. Sure, there was nothing left, my eyes lowering to the painful game we'd started our deadly evening with. Monopoly. Specifically, to the messy pile of 50s, 20s, and 10s on Ravi's side of the board. I knew his etiquette for swapping some of them out for hundreds was quite poor. The cash stacked high, which made sense. He was crushing all game, and yet I crouched down and did an even more aggressive sweep of the spot that we'd started our desperate search at to discover his preserved Samsung Galaxy A35 underneath the fake money with a new word to greet me. Smile. And it really did feel like time was up this time. "I found it! You have to smile!" I screamed like a goddamn auctioneer. Evelyn turned first from her spot in the kitchen. "What?" I ripped the phone from the ground and held up the message to her. "Smile!" She mirrored my uncomfortable expression, all teeth, feigned happiness, as did Ravi as he bolted out of the room before even seeing the message on the phone, or my intense eyes. Hero threw open the door. "Couldn't find anything. I'm sorry," he screamed. He saw our wide smiling faces our eyes screaming at him to get the hint as I tried to mouth the word while keeping my pose, but instead it sounded more like smur. And yet, despite the confusing sight, for the luckiest stroke in the world, he copied. It showed me those pearly whites. I retained my beaming smile, feeling a tear of fear travel down my cheeks, my eyes glued to Ravi's phone in my hand, hoping and praying that we wouldn't all get torn apart. And the word disappeared. I showed the group the proof. And one by one, our cheery expressions dropped to our default nervous frowns. A resting skull face restored. A collective exhale. I can't fucking do this, said Ravi. I know, Evelyn added. And unlike some of the gaps we'd been afforded in the past, I already spotted a new message on the single remaining functioning phone left in my right hand. Point to sacrifice. I could feel the group's eyes on me. I couldn't hide the misery. What? Ravi asked. Point to sacrifice, I said, barely legible. HA? Evelyn asked. I tilted the phone so they could read it. I couldn't say the words any louder, my body wouldn't let me. Underneath the words, a timer had been running, one that already was down to 145, 144, 143, by the time I flashed them the phone. And yet still all of us needed more seconds to let it settle. I felt defeated. Truly this time. All right, said Ravi, cutting through the holding pattern. So what, we talk it through with the time we have left. Maybe we all agree on someone to point at. I mean, hey, fuck knows what I have to live for. You're on next. My family. Mom, Dad, siblings, I wasn't even thinking of this whole time. They're probably all dead. Yeah, I interrupted his words, hitting me immediately and curbing any remaining social etiquette I had left. Everyone I had ever known was likely gone. Wow. Evelyn smiled at us softly. I just have you guys now, she said. So, yeah, fuck this, she said immediately, pointing to herself, almost causing me to die right there in fear that she'd been torn apart immediately, but the counter was still ticking down. I flipped the board on this bullshit, she said without wavering. 112, 111, 110. Hero pointed to himself. Fuck it. Yeah, you know what? I flipped the board too, he said. I looked at him, almost nervously exasperated. Really, after all that, guys? 107, 106, 105. There is a hell, Ravi said. Unlikely, but what the fuck? Maybe we dodged that bullet. He curled his index finger back toward himself. Flip the fucking board. I looked at them. It was strange to feel a deluge of selfish thoughts flood into me all at once. 40, 39, 38. All right, I said, copying my peers. Let's do it. I pointed at myself too, like we were all playing Simon Says or something. 33, 32, 31. I took an appreciative look at my old friends. Longest standing friends I've ever had in my stupid life, and then at the Monopoly board we were playing on. Really was quite an awful game. I wasn't sure why we'd all subject ourselves to it. 27, 26. I saw the pile of money on free parking. 23, 22. Only way to make it fun was to play with bullshit rules, house rules. 20, 19. Wait, I said, follow me. I pointed to the door. I opened it, held it open for the rest. 15, 14, 13. I pointed at Ravi's dead neighbor in the hallway in front of the door, Monica. We didn't know what we were dealing with until she was dead. Her sacrifice gave us a chance, I said, almost looking up as if I was speaking to whoever was enacting this terror on us. I was aware it was in reach. 9, 8. And we probably lost a lot of humanity since then, so... Sorry, I said, pointing at her. And thank you. 6, 5. And my best friends pointed too. A real morbid way to close things out, with a clash of sorry and thank you escaping them as what would likely be their last words. I had really interrupted what was quite a nice moment inside for the strangeness. 2, 1, 0. House rules, I said. And then I prepared myself for it. Pain. Annihilation. But nothing came. Instead, Ravi's phone in my hand just read, "Good game," before defaulting to Ravi's homepage picture. We stood there for 10 minutes, it felt, before we finally ventured inside, single file like a group of polite zombies. I was unsure what to make of what had just happened, what to do, who to check in on, the state of the world, what was going on around me. I sat back down at the Monopoly board. The others, in almost Manchurian Candidate sort of way, took their spots too. I think it was my turn, I said slowly. I grabbed the dice. I rolled it. 10. I tapped my top hat icon on every square until I landed on Short Line Railroad. "You want to buy it?" Evelyn asked me. I thought about it for too long. Before finally. Sure. Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta. I just want to say thank you guys for watching tonight's video, listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. If you'd like to join this list of names that I frequently mispronounce, you can check the description in the link down below, which I really appreciate because this helps me, 1, keep the lights on, and 2, helps me pay authors for the stories that you hear on this channel. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody on this list of Patreons. Some of these amazing folks are Diana Kraus, Acid System, Blake Rattler, Brandon Mendoza, Greta Crow, Paltuna, Chicago Hitman, Corey Kenshin, Crusader Chocobo, Dakota Best, Daniel Polson, Dante Kincaid, Enchanted Buns, Estebean, Hades Nephew, Himbo Jerry, Our Minute Seconds Time, Ingegerd Solstrom, Jay Kearns, Jadis Pet, McMog, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Psychomel, Plant Piz, Red Shadow Cat, Remember the Sun, Salty Surprise, Samara Lynn, Seclude, Simba's Bloody Mojo, Sky Harbor, Smiley the Psycho. I used to think that I was brave. In the summer, I'd go out with the boys and take charge of our little expeditions into the forests around our little town, pretending that we were archaeologists uncovering lost tombs and fighting off mummies or mutant vampire bats, and by the time I'd reached 12, there wasn't a tree I hadn't climbed or a boy in school I hadn't tussled with. I'd always come back with a scraped knee or a skinned elbow, with dirt and grass stains on my sneakers and burrs stuck to the hems of my jeans, and my mom and dad would just roll their eyes and smile because I was just so precious. I'm pretty sure I was the only girl in my class who didn't scream when Ben Howlitz brought one of his dad's tarantula specimens in for show and tell. I mean, the thing was dead and behind glass. I was always first to take a dare, too. Couldn't stand the thought of someone thinking that I was just some girly girl because I wouldn't climb the water tower or walk through the graveyard at midnight and touch the statue that was supposed to kill you if you did. I didn't tell my parents about those things unless I actually got hurt. I think I had to go to the hospital like 4 times before elementary school was finished. They were always pissed, but I just bide my time until I could start up again. I kept on like that, with fear and guilt in my periphery until the second year of middle school. We were in Miss Newman's English class. It was July, and we were reading The Turn of the Screw. And about halfway through, we got bored and started talking about ghost stories. Miss Newman talked about the Victorian tradition of reading a ghost story on Christmas Eve. She asked us if we know any ghost stories. Someone brought up Casper, and we all made fun of him for reading kid stuff. One of the girls whose parents were laxer brought up some R-rated movies she'd seen. Terry Lishstone brought up M.R. James because of course she did. And then Lee Howards, who was one of my closest friends, asked if we know the story of the McKenna house. He says it like he's winding up to give us all the juicy details, eyes narrowed, his lips starting to quirk up into a smirk because his dad patrols around there a lot and he thinks he can give us all nightmares. and Miss Newman shuts him down. She didn't yell. She rarely had to. She just snapped her head around, looked at him down her bony beak of a nose, and said, "No, we will not be talking about that house in this classroom. Do you understand?" Lee did. Of course he did. And he shut up. Most of us were scared of Miss Newman. With her dark eyes, pointy nose, gray hair, and thin fingers. She just had this classically stern, unlikable teacher air about her. Like the villain in a story about magic orphans or fairy gardens. And she loathed that house with a passion. She lived close to it, actually. In one of 3 houses at the bottom of the hill it sat on. We figured she'd probably been there and seen it all go down. I asked her once, right in front of everyone. I'd never even considered the fact that someone would be furious without raising their voice, but the way she said, "It's all stories, now get back to your seat." And the way that she looked at me while she said it, with her dark eyes punching holes through me, making me feel like she was about to slap me. She scared me. She was the only adult that I'd met who could really make me feel small and stupid and, well, childish. And I hated her for it. I made her my nemesis because a kid like me had to have one, even though I doubt she ever really gave me much of a second thought outside of school. Still, I was fed up with her attitude, and I saw my chance to have some fun, so after class had ended, I cornered Lee and asked him, well, I told him, actually, that we were going to go and check out the house. His eyes lit up and he smiled, this big mischievous smirk, and he said, "Hell yeah, I'm in." Of course, I dragged Grady into it too. Grady was my brother, and our relationship was a mess, to put it lightly. Back then I was so full of fire, and he wasn't. He wasn't a risk taker like I was. He was sort of an island. Someone who sat on the sidelines and read or built models or watched the Muppet Show. He didn't live like I did. And back then, I thought that meant that he didn't live, period. I was so obsessed with being strong and tough. To me, he was just weak. So I bullied him. I told myself that I was just toughening him up, getting a rise out of him, getting him mad, getting him to take risks. I knew better. I knew he was just shy and sensitive. But I kept going. It's a wonder he didn't hate me. Maybe he did. I don't know. Sometimes when it's late and I can't get to sleep, I tell myself that he did over and over until I get too fed up to do anything but sleep. So yeah, I dragged him into it. Cornered him after school, put my arm around his shoulders, laid it on real thick, the whole thing. He actually put up a fight, which was pretty surprising to me. He went on about how, despite what some people said, not many people actually knew what had happened up there. So there could have been traps or super old, broken drug paraphernalia waiting to stick us if we touched the wrong thing in the dark. Or druggy squatters. And who knew what they might do? He even finished it off by saying, "And if the floor breaks and I break my leg, then you'll get in so much trouble." Looking back, he was actually pretty convincing, but I was way too fired up to let anyone sway me. I just rushed ahead, told him to stuff it, or something like that, that we were going, and that it would be good for him, all that crap.
Yeah,
and he just...
I'm like all zoned
he wilted
in here,
under
and
me.
also listening to the story I'm listening to.
I didn't care. I wanted to stick it to Miss Newman and my parents and every other well-meaning adult and condescending teen that had ever told me to stay away, and the years of hearing the story had sort of desensitized me in a way, and also hyped me up to see if the story was true.
How'd the Jet
It went
Set
like
Radio
this,
feature go?
give or take. The McKennas were a wealthy family from New York who bought the land in 1976, and by 78, they had a house built and moved in. The husband's name was Jared, and the wife was Sandra. They were both quiet, reserved people. Jared was short and fat and rarely left his wife's side. Sandra was tall, sad-eyed, and her skin was the color of bread dough. They were charitable, kind to anyone who met them on their lonely evening walks by the lake, or when they worked themselves up enough to go out to eat, but they were fragile, not normal, especially Sandra, who kept showing up at school plays and talent shows, but couldn't ever stay till the end before she had to leave in tears, and who sometimes caught children by the arm and stared at them with wet, dull eyes until they pulled themselves away and ran. Acting like that, it's not surprised that rumors started spreading. The adults whispered that she'd been in and out of asylums her whole life, that she'd smothered her baby during an episode of postpartum psychosis. The kids told each other that she was a child snatcher or a witch, looking for her next meal, or maybe even a pedophile, scooping out the choicest kid in town. A lady my mom knew from church bumped into Jared one evening, walking from the town's antique store. He'd stumbled, and the thing he'd been carrying fell out of his hands. My mom's friend, being a decent person, went to pick it up and saw the cover of what was definitely a book on the occult. She never told Mom what the cover picture was exactly. All she said was that it was vulgar and utterly horrid. Eventually, as the rumors grew and people started getting colder towards them, the McKennas stopped leaving their house. Eventually, without any new incidents to stoke the fire, the talk turned towards newer things to be upset about, and the McKennas sort of slipped into ghost story by flashlight territory. And that's where they stayed. And then, one blue-gray night in July, when the air was thick with gnats and the wind was cool, the police got a call from Jared. He was in tears, begging them to come quickly. "Something's happened to my wife," he said. "It all went wrong. Everything's wrong. She's dying. You have to help us." And so they do. 3 or 4 cop cars go squealing off into the night, up the dirt road on the fringes of town, and to the McKennas' quaint little house. When they get there, they can hear screaming and sobbing from inside the foyer. And when they bust down the door, they find Jared in the process of dragging his wife's body across the floor. She's white, turning yellow from the blood loss. One leg is hanging on by a nerve cluster, nearly torn off at the thigh. And her belly and privates are mauled. It takes a proper autopsy for them to see that some parts of her are missing. Of course, they arrest Jared. The man's a babbling, drooling, screaming wreck who can only say, "I'm sorry, Sandra." And the cops find a museum's worth of occult stuff all throughout the place. So it's not too much of a stretch to say that he went and killed his wife as part of some dark ritual. After everything, the house was left to rot. But some people say that on clear, blue, quiet nights, when the wind is cool and the gnats are flitting, you can hear Sandra's ghost staggering to and fro inside, calling for her husband to come join her. Obviously, there were elements that kept changing. Sometimes her body was headless. Other times, she'd be the one dragging him. The one that was most common when I was growing up was that the police found the two of them alive, wrapped in bloody robes and standing over a baby or a kid that they'd just made a meal of. I've spent a long time going over what I can in the way of evidence. I have a theory that I'm pretty sure of, but I'm gonna leave it till the end. I want to go over what happened to us before I lose my nerve. And if I think I'm fine after, then I'll tell you. Back then, I heard about all those awful, gruesome things, and although I did have nightmares, I still felt this giddiness at the idea of going there, or delving into the unknown like an old-timey pulp hero. What better place to test myself, right? So we snuck out at 11 because I thought it'd be cool to explore the haunted house at midnight. We brought our backpacks stuffed full of horror comics and candy, Halloween in July, flashlights, and my little flip phone. The house was at the opposite side of town, down a lonely little dirt drive walled in by the woods. Grady had brought our dad's Kodak, which was pretty much his anyway, and by the time we'd gotten there, he'd taken about a dozen pictures. When I asked him why, he sort of stuck his nose in the air and said, "Because it looks pretty at night, and I want to enjoy it." I said something smarmy back to him, and then I pushed him. He got up and shoved me, and then we were racing the rest of the way. It was so quick. It always has been. In the end, I had to trip him up as he made it into the driveway of the house, and then I twisted his arm behind his back until his laughter stopped and the begging started. I was such a creep. Probably smiled when I did it. Things were quiet for a bit afterwards. Lee called to say that he was on his way, so that gave us some time to look around the outside of the place. I'd been hearing stories about the place since I was little. Our town was big, with forests on all sides and tall mountains, and a nice blue lake. And there are dozens of weird places you can still visit. The old rectory, the museum, the biggest library in the county, the abandoned wharf out by the lake, little stone circle near the hiking trail. But those places were all charming, you know? Quaint, like an old Halloween die cut or a Ray Bradbury story. Places that our parents approved of. Places where tourists went. Places that had a history that you could make family-friendly. That wouldn't taint our little child brains and turn us into witches or drug dealers or whatever. The McKenna house wasn't like that. The adults didn't like talking about it. If I asked them, they'd just say it wasn't a place for little girls to go playing in. And if I nagged them enough, they'd get antsy or angry, and they'd tell me to go find some other place to horse around at. Or sometimes they'd crouch down, look me dead in the eye, and say something like, "Some very bad things happened up there, okay? There's some very bad things." And they're serious voices as if we'd figure that out. And they'd leave it at that, like saying that wouldn't make me and every other bored tween and teen want to go have a look. And people did go have a look. But nobody ever went in. At least not farther than the mudroom, which had a closed door at the other end of it. And I don't think that counted. Not that I'd actually seen it, outside of a few pictures. After someone a few classes above me tried to break a window, the place ended up being patrolled by one of the policemen, usually one that looked suitably scary to a kid. Probably picked like that on purpose. Stuff that got taken from the house was like a good luck charm or a priceless museum piece. Toby Nash had a boot that he'd taken from the mudroom, and he treated that disgusting thing like a Picasso painting or something. So, with all that said, when I actually saw the place, it lived up to my expectations. It was a tall, thin house covered in narrow windows, almost like the kind medieval soldiers would fire crossbows through. The top was all green gables that were as straight and sharp as knife tips, with a few old brick chimneys sticking out here and there. There was an awning going around the whole place between the first and the second floors, and everything except the shutters and the roof were painted in this light blue, like the kind of blue that you see in nurseries. I remember the last rays of the sun bouncing off the dark glass and the cotton candy inferno of the evening sky overhead and thinking, it looks like a fairy tale house. And yeah, it did. But it was more like a fairy tale house a long time after the happily ever after, when the prince and princess had moved away to bigger and better things and left their little cottage behind to rot in the enchanted forest. Grady was actually the one who got over it first. It was the clicking of his camera that snapped me out of it. I remember being glad he was too fixated on the house to see the expression that had been on my face, or even if it was, for only a moment. We followed this half-wrecked stone pathway through a tangled mess of a garden that led all the way up to the little front porch. Grady snatching the Polaroids that fell from his camera all the while. There wasn't any graffiti, but I could see a few places where some people had dug out a chip of wood from the already gouged up front porch. The door itself was really scratched up too, but the knob still worked, and it wasn't locked or bolted. I said something like, "We should just go in. Maybe we can hide and scare Lee when he comes by." And I didn't mean a word of it. Grady gave me a look. He was really good at mimicking our parents' facial expressions, but they never worked on me. It was hard to take someone smaller and slighter than you seriously, especially when you've seen them cry. Or when you've made them cry. Still, that time I relented. Some little need in my mind told me to not go in without someone else with me. Lee was bigger than Grady by a fair margin. He played a lot of sports, and I knew that he'd bring a baseball bat or something with him because he always did that whenever we explored a new place. So we did some looking while we waited. It ended up being only about 5 minutes, but Grady got a bunch of shots of the actual house while I took a look at the garden. If you didn't look at it, and I mean, really look at it, if you just let your brain file it away under part of the house, then you wouldn't notice all the little details. Like the doughy white clusters of fungus sprouting up everywhere, even on the flowers. Or how the roses weren't roses because they were too tall. They had big bloated bulbs that weren't the right kind of red. And their thorns were too long and black. Or the bird bath that was half sunken into the ground and all tangled with ivy. But you could still see that there was a carving of a naked woman with a hummingbird head, holding the pincers of a giant scorpion with a man's head. I bet Lee would have thought some of that stuff was cool. And maybe it sounds cool to you. But there, in all that stillness, with the humidity weighing everything down and the shadows growing out from the grass and the trees, it really wasn't. Eventually, Lee came panting and gasping up the trail. Grady asked him if he was okay. I gave him crap for being late, and then it was time. I didn't really wait to open it, I just did. I knew that I'd look scared if I hesitated. I knew in some deeper way that I'd just give up and walk away if I let myself think about it too much.
All right,
I had to be the strong one, the personal ethos of a tomboy tween. God help me. The door was heavy, and it didn't make a sound when it swung in. The air that came from inside was cold, dusty, and damp. It was dark, but we'd brought some pretty powerful flashlights. The door opened up into the mudroom, which wasn't much to look at, just a bunch of crusty waders and old boots. One pair of which was missing a shoe, rating, but it made my stomach turn. Still, I made myself take the first step. I brought a few things with me, some wires, a hammer, a screwdriver, and a skeleton key that my dad kept in his junk drawer. Obviously, none of us knew how to pick a lock, but I was ready to try something if I had to. But there was no need, because there was a key in the lock. A little silver key with a big purple tassel that was so grimy and dusty, it looked like some kind of mummified dead spider. Toby hadn't even mentioned a key. None of the older kids did. I told Lee and Grady about it, went on about what total lying wimps the other people must have been as I reached out, and I turned it. There was this deep, resonant click that I could hear echoing out through the walls and into the depths of the house, and the thing popped open like it was on springs or something. And this rush of cold, musty air hit us like the house had let go of a breath it had been holding in. I remember how we all gasped at the sound. Lee whistled, or he tried to, and Grady reached out to take my hand, then he stopped. He just hugged himself. I was glad he kept his hands to himself, because mine had gone wet and clammy in what felt like a second. We all went in single file. The sounds of crickets, the wind in the trees gave way to the creaks and groans of the house, and what I thought was the scratching of mice in the walls. The foyer looked like a smaller version of one of those old plantation mansions with thin white pillars, marble floors, 2 doorways leading off to other wings, and a big, tall staircase going up to the 2nd floor. We argued a bit over what to do. Lee wanted to go upstairs. I wanted to find the nearest room so I could snag something and leave. But Grady, in a moment of bravery that totally caught me by surprise, said that it'd be better if we went through all the rooms, starting from the bottom. We'd be legends. Hometown heroes like Tom Sawyer or something. We'd have pictures to prove it too. The older kids stopped looking at us like we were babies, and the kids our age would worship the ground we walked on. He looked like he was falling into a daydream while he laid it out for us. It made sense. A bullied kid might go pretty far to get at least a little respite from everything. At least outside of home. We went left first. The echoing marble gave way to creaky old wood. Proper floors for a haunted house, right? Our flashlight beams pooled on the ground like a little boat, big dark sea full of shadowy little islands that you could just barely make out. I'd hoped to find old blood or a tape outline maybe, something, but all I saw was dust and shadows. We ended up in the living room first, and by my thinking at the time, all my worries that the house was going to leave us cold faded away. It was a big room, but there was so much clutter that it looked smaller. There were a couple of chairs that had sheets on them and a ratty, overstuffed couch that didn't. A little fireplace, another door at the far end of the room, stacks of paperbacks and newspapers, charts and folders, and babies. Not real ones, just figures, statues. But that didn't really make me less creeped out. There were hundreds of them sitting on the tops of the stacks, cluttering the coffee tables, lines in front of the books on the bookshelf, boys and girls of every race from every period, plastic, dollar store looking crap and antiques, realistic, cartoony. It gave me a thrill. Grady started taking pictures pretty much immediately. Lee went to the stacks and I went to the bookshelves. For a few rows, it was all romance and stuff about color theory and architecture. But it didn't take long for the selection to change. It went from To Sir with Love and The Art of Color to The Expectant Mother in Motherhood 101.